What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Art of War live stream, and it's the New Balance update. We have been dying for this moment. I have been, at least.
Absolutely. We've been waiting. We've been holding our breath, and it's finally here.
It is finally here. It's been a long time in the making. We've seen the meta develop over the past couple months, and not the way we wanted it to be, really, and not the way Games Workshop wanted it to be. I don't think anybody really wants Eldar to win every single tournament, period. But they were up there. And thankfully...
No, they only had a higher tournament % win rate than most armies had game win rate.
Just a little bit. Tad over the top.
It was fine.
But this is going to be a dramatic fix to the game. Honestly, for a while they had been kind of pointing towards just points updates, just stick with their schedule. But this is much more comprehensive than that by a long shot.
Yes.
And I'm very glad for that.
They decided that the need was great, and so they were going to actually change some rules. I'm very happy they did that.
Absolutely. So we're going to go through the rules commentary, we're going to go through all of the different balanced Dataslate changes, and then all of the points and talk about our thoughts. And we'll do a full recap towards the end of kind of where we think the meta is headed. So if you like this type of content, please give us a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about us, and leave a comment. What are you most excited about in this balance update? There's a lot to be excited about. And if you want more content, we just released in our war room a game of Necrons versus Grey Knights playing the new update, as well as Tyranids versus Death Guard. So two of those games in the war room right now. Click the link below, thewarroom.vhx.tv. There's a 3-day free trial, so you can just sign up for the free trial and watch them today.
Absolutely. Never a better time.
Never a better time. So let's dive right in here, starting with the rules commentary. So not too much ended up changing here. I believe, luckily, everything is in red. It was relatively minor changes, but if we scroll through, one of them relates to how, being eligible to shoot, which only really matters for Tau. And here it is, eligible to shoot when equipped with ranged weapons. Unless a rule specifically states otherwise, units that have shot are no longer eligible to shoot until the start of the next phase. So that means...
they never specified that. I guess it... whatever. I don't know really.
I never took advantage of infinite, being able to basically infinite for the greater good, but this is really targeted at Tau, so they can't just have I shoot and then I'm going to observe and then blah, blah, blah.
And the chain...
Yeah, the chain continues.
The chain continues.
I never played it that way, but that's really fixing that. And then I believe there's one other change. It was to hulls and measuring distances. This was another relatively confusing thing, when exactly you measure to a base versus a hull. And I'm glad that they clarified it towards the bottom.
How'd they come down on it?
So when you're measuring to and from vehicles with bases, so excluding aircraft or walkers, you always measure to and from the closest part of the model for all rules purposes. This just completely smooths that over and clarifies that whatever's closer. Is it the base? Is it the hull? Doesn't matter. So like Ghost Arcs or Doomsday Arcs, they can't just make it impossible for you to reach my base.
Yes. Now it looks like you still put your base in terrain to see if you're fully in the terrain feature, but when you're measuring to the model, you are measuring to the model now instead of, that was so aggravating. They got rid of that, thankfully.
It was enormously aggravating.
It was.
And I believe those are pretty much all the changes here in this.
All right.
I don't think there are any other qualifiers. So before we jump into the data slate here, Jack, what are you feeling? Like, how hyped are you on a scale of...
I'm pretty damn hyped. I'll be honest, the game badly needed some changes. It was not in a great place, and I'm excited to see things get shaken up. I think it needed to happen, and I'm excited to play 40k again.
All right. Let's get into
this. This is the spicy stuff.
This is the spicy stuff. These are big changes, and these are changes to the core rules starting out. First of all, Dev Wounds, an ability that has dominated the top of the meta. A lot of top armies have multiple ways to easily access this. In particular, Eldar basically just spam Dev Wounds all game.
Yes, and they still very well might.
They still very well might, but the thing about Dev Wounds is previously it was Mortal Wounds, and Mortal Wounds spill over. So if I do 30 Mortal Wounds to one of Jack's units, his unit takes 30 Mortal Wounds. Alright, now if a Wraith Knight goes ahead and shoots you with Dev Wounds, and one of the guns does 2d6 damage, and all of a sudden it's 12 damage, does 12 damage to a model. Doesn't spill over 12 damage to the entire unit. Massive change, especially to big damage Dev Wound abilities.
Yes, there was... this has a lot of downstream effects.
Yep.
First off, anything that gives you anything against mortals will no longer trigger against devastating wounds. So Custodes went from being the most durable army against dev wounds to being the least durable army against dev wounds. Just that quickly, huh? Anything that is single damage, or even really damage 2, although damage 2 would probably like to be mortal wounds. Even single damage, any single damage dev wound weapons got way better. Assault cannons, whatnot. I would much rather be an unpassable save than be a mortal wound, for sure. People have defense against mortal wounds. Nobody has if a rule ignored your save, you get a feel no pain.
Exactly.
Even like against damage 2, damage 3 are going to be ripping Custodes apart as opposed to bouncing before.
The Omnipulus.
You know, my Grey Knight Terminators with Drago with a 4 feel no pain against mortals are going to die to dev wounds now as opposed to not.
Yep.
There's this is kind of a give and take sort of dev wounds change.
Yep.
So it's a bit odd. But definitely the Wraith Knight does not like this.
It'll be really interesting, kind of the minutia of it, whether people start giving up those feel no pains, because it's obviously not as useful. The feel no pains against mortals, it's not as useful against dev wounds now. But all of a sudden there are other abilities like Grey Knight Librarians that got a big buff in this update that are potentially going to be just cleaning through stuff.
Yep. If mortal wound defense got a lot less important, which means if you have ways to do mortal wounds, they are more important because people will remove their mortal wound defense from their army.
Yeah, this is a huge change. It definitely is a tone down of Eldar in particular, but in a lot of things in the game as well. So
yes,
that's one of the things that's going to be changing what Eldar do.
Although I think Eldar into Custodes is now better for Eldar, weirdly enough.
All right, so one of the other issues with 10th edition was that a lot of the top armies had access to free stratagems and using them on multiple units. So not only could they make them free, but they could use them on multiple units very easily. This was a distinct problem because a lot of armies in the mid-tier and down didn't even have access to free strats, let alone using multiple different strats.
Yes.
So it was very much a case of have and have-nots, so they changed it here. First of all, rules that modify the CP cost of a stratagem when you target a particular unit can only do so for a stratagem that targets multiple units, GSC being one of them, if every unit you target has the same ability to modify the CP of that strat.
Yeah, this is kind of just a rules clarification. To be honest, it was something, some tournaments went one way, some tournaments went another. Mm-hmm. Would one captain in a Deathwatch army, I mean if those exist anymore, would one captain in a Deathwatch army allow you to use a free strat on 2 units? No, you need 2 captains now. I guess this is fine. This is probably what needed to happen there.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was more unclear than it was like an actual errata change.
Exactly. One character in one unit shouldn't be making 2 entirely different units make strats free. So nice change there, quality of life, and then rules that modify the CP cost of a stratagem, but that don't specify the name of the stratagem, can only be used to affect the CP cost of battle tactic stratagems. Guess what? We all have to learn what the stratagems are now.
Yep, that was completely irrelevant before, but now we all need to know, is it a battle tactic? Or is it an epic deed? Is it a war gear strat?
Strategic ploys.
Oh, man. I'm shocked I even know those names.
Now we have to know exactly which stratagems are which. A couple of them have changed, but not as many as I thought that might. And in addition, this rule doesn't apply to the Aircast Colossus, which is the Manta's rule, or basically any of these ones that make huge Titanic units. Stratagems cost 3 CP.
Yeah, like the Towering Wraith construct means any stratagems are doubled.
Yeah.
They don't get to ignore that. Sorry, Eldar. Phantom.
The Revenant Titan.
Revenant Titan or whatever. You don't get to ignore that. But this is weird. I don't really know why this is in here. I didn't think free strat was that big of a deal. A lot of armies had it.
I thought it was a big deal because the armies between the top versus the bottom, top armies had it, bottom armies really didn't have access to this.
That's fair.
So I think it is one of the ways to help even them out in addition to points. So I'm all in favor of this. It was kind of ludicrous that one of the top armies would get to spend their same stratagem 8 times in a game, and then I'm here maybe I'll get 3 strike and fades this game. So I think it helps even out the balance between factions, in my opinion.
That's fair. Actually, Eldar just get extra CP, so they don't care.
Yeah, they don't care.
They don't actually get free strats. They just extra CP.
Just extra CP.
Extra CP.
All right, and then, speaking of that, extra CP abilities are more valuable now that free stratagems are a little less prevalent.
Yeah, it used to be +1 CP per turn, or getting a free strat were roughly comparable. Not the case anymore.
Yep. Then there's a whole bunch of abilities in the game that also modify strats in the negative sense of making it increasing cost. So things like Fate Weaver or Cypher from Chaos Space Marines. A whole bunch of abilities have this vect, as we call it colloquially, but increasing the cost of opponent stratagems. That also can only be used on Battle Tactic.
Yep, and if you are confused as to what in the core rulebook is a battle tactic, you can still vect command point reroll. So, have fun with that. I think that and go to ground.
Yep, I think those are the two ones because there's a couple other changes here.
Yes.
So stratagems that can be used more than once per phase/turn. So this is another thing that was often combined with making a stratagem cost 0. Rules that allow you to use a stratagem even if another unit has been targeted by the strat this phase. 1 second. But do not specify the name of the stratagem, can only be used to use on battle tactics as well.
That's a very, very big deal.
Exactly.
Things like the Custodes got worse. Don't worry. They hooked you. They hooked a boy up.
She's cheaper, but once again, you're gonna have to know those battle tactics, and it's gonna revolve around some armies have 4 of them, surprisingly, and other armies have 1 or 2 of them. And a couple of them are going to change a little bit below this. But thank you so much to Mr. John McCardell for gifting a whole bunch of subs. Really appreciate it. You are amazing. You are constantly gifting subs to our community. You are the hero that we need. And I personally love you. I think Jack does as well.
That's right. I have an undying love.
An undying love.
Undying. It will not
John
go
McCardell.
anywhere.
So thank you so much. Really appreciate it. And on top of that, if you were one of the people who was gifted a sub, please make sure you accept it from YouTube. I believe there's a button or a notification where you have to accept it. But once you do, you're going to get access to some amazing War Room content. So thank you so much. I know everybody has been super chatting. If you are super chatting, we're going to answer all those at the very end just to keep the content, kind of keep the flow of it.
But we will get to all of them.
We will get to all of them at the end. So super chat throughout, we will get to them. Okay.
All right. Fire Overwatch. Overwatch was a
much maligned,
huge deal. It was a huge part of 10th edition, just getting to shoot. Some armies got to use it better than others. Anything with very good auto-hitting weapons got to just fire twice for 1 CP. Anything with a lot of sustained hits or re-rolls or whatever got to shoot twice for 1 CP. It was real strong. The Wraith Knight just overwatching you until you cried. It was very sad, right? 50% of the time nothing would happen, 50% of the time your unit would go up in smoke, and nobody knows what's going to happen, but they'll spend that CP every turn. Now they cannot. It cannot target a Titanic unit at all.
Huge.
And you have to have a line of sight to the target. No indirect firing Overwatch.
Yeah, that 1 wound model that's about to contest your objective because you don't have enough OC on it. You can't just Overwatch with your Desolation Marines or whatever.
Apparently, command reroll is not a battle tactic. John lied directly to my face.
Why would John do that? While we look that up, thank you so much to Fate's Stay Dreamer. Thank you so much for your 10 gifted subs. Another amazing hero of the channel. We really appreciate it. And hilariously, the normal gifter of subs, Mr. Nurgle Matt, was gifted a sub through Fates here. So thank you so much. And a little spark of irony there.
They are wrong. It is a battle tactic.
It is a battle
Get wrecked. Officially get wrecked.
Chat, stop being wrong. Come on.
Yep.
All right, so huge change. Titanic not being able to use it is massive, especially for knights, Imperial knights.
Yes.
That alone is a gigantic change, but I really hated having indirect fire units just being able to threaten to pick up a key chaff unit on Overwatch. This is a huge change.
There's a reason coming up. In fact, it's on the same page as to why this change is not as impactful. It's kind of doubling down on the same thing. Titanic can't really use Overwatch as effectively anymore anyway.
Yep.
But it is a good change. I think things that limit Overwatch, would love to see it go to 12 inches, but...
yeah, I'm a bit surprised they honestly did as much to the core rules as this, which is just a good sign that they're willing to go back to the main things they designed for 10th edition. So Insane Bravery, this is a stratagem very rarely used, but it's going to be a lot more impactful now. So 1 CP, when this was the Battle Shock, the Unbattle Shock stratagem, it's a bit different now. So, in your command phase, just before you take a battle shock test, so there's no roll, you don't know if you failed anything, you decide, I'm going to spend this stratagem, and I automatically pass the test instead of rolling. And you can now only use it once per game.
Yes. They were sick of everyone's jokes about how morale was going to be the most impactful that it's ever been, and then it was the least impactful it's ever been. They were sick of all that. Feel free to be battle shocked in the future, fools. Like, that's their approach. They're like, all right, you think it's not impactful? All right, you're battle shocked now, and also you, and you're battle shocked. So warm up those rolling hands. Get those 2d6s rolling hot.
Yep, so in the end, it'll probably come up maybe still once a game, but it means that if your opponent has other abilities to force you to take more battle shocks in your command phase, which isn't too popular.
Most of the abilities that force you to take battle shocks wouldn't let you auto-pass it anyway, because it has to be in the battle shock step.
I'm saying specifically abilities that force you in your command phase to take multiple.
Right, but those are not in the battle shock step of the command phase.
Oh,
so
yeah,
even the Tyranid one wouldn't let you auto-pass it. You just roll the dice, and whatever happens, happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is just if you naturally fail. Frankly, because the damage is still relatively high in the game, most units are getting crippled to the point where they're really not relevant or dead.
But if there's like two dudes standing on an objective, you really need to evaluate how much do I need these 5 points? Am I willing to take like a 40% chance to fail this test?
Yeah.
And lose 5 points?
There's plenty of stuff that is leadership like 8 or so.
Yeah, or even leadership 6 is failable. Leadership 5 is failable pretty easily even.
So, I don't want to be failing leadership 5, Jack.
Well, spend a CP once. that's your defense.
It does give some additional value to abilities like the Silent King has, where you can pick a unit at the end of your command phase to unbattle shock them, or one of the abilities like at the start of any phase you can unbattle shock. So those things will become a little more valuable, which is nice.
Yes.
Because we basically never see them at this point. All right, Ruins, visibility change. This has been proposed for a while. Basically, since the edition came out, there was a lot of people in the community that proposed this specific change, and I'm glad Games Workshop has come around to it. Towering has been a problem in that sometimes you just get tabled, or the terrain just isn't good enough to protect you.
You're at the mercy of not just the footprint of the terrain, which is what 10th edition is based around, was balanced around, and what's actually on the terrain. So like the footprint for 90% of interactions is all you care about. And so maybe if you're at a smaller tournament or something, there's the actual terrain piece on top, not that dense. And then Towering comes along and tables you on turn 1, because a lot of the Towering armies have a lot of guns. The Wraith Knight would just shoot you from downtown, and he would table you. Well, no longer. Now they just get a little quality of life improvement, as opposed to like a completely different way of playing the game. Now, if they tow into a terrain feature, they can see through that terrain feature.
Yes.
That's it.
Not the board.
Not the board. They play the game the same way everyone else does. And if they tow into a terrain feature, you can see them, but only through that terrain feature.
I think this dramatically helps local scenes where terrain collections are being built up, or they're not at the same kind of level as like top tournament terrain, which totally reasonable. Terrain is very expensive, or just building it up takes a while, especially to get a lot of tables. This massively helps those type of TOs, building up communities, which I'm a big fan of. Also,
it avoids having any kind of, I think I can see your antenna through this divot with my Wraith Knight. Nope, doesn't matter anymore. Sorry.
Doesn't matter. Thank you so much.
I love that change, by the way.
Huge change. I'm all in favor of it. Fantastic. We've got Sanguini Sus. Thank you so much for the 5 gifted subs. Anybody, once again, who has received gifted subs from Sanguini Sus, Fates, or John McCardell, please make sure you accept them so you get access to all the awesome benefits of our Bronze Worm tier. Okay, let's go ahead and continue on faction rules. There's more here than I expected to see, frankly. Adeptus Custodes. Alright, we already mentioned that their Feel No Pain against mortals is a bit less valuable. There's some more changes to them. First of all, Unwavering Sentinel Stratagem has been changed to Epic Deed from Battle Tactic, and I believe that is their Fight First ability, which effectively meant that Custodes completely dominate the fight phase.
Yeah, so you can't make it free anymore, but you were never able to double it up, because doubling up Fight First was just not how the game worked. They would still get to fight before you. So the fact you can't double up fight first, not a big deal. You can't make it free. Okay, you have to spend the 2 CP each time. That's fine. That's fine, because you're honestly, the -1 damage is a battle tactic, and you're going to be hitting that button as many times as you can.
Yeah, you are.
So I think this is a very minor change. That it's no longer, because you can't double it up. That's the biggest deal. Like, you can't double it up, but you couldn't double it up ahead before. So who cares?
How about some more impactful changes?
Yeah. Custodian Guard going from 4 to 4, 5, 9, 10 to 4 or 5. And then Custodian Wardens going from 3 or 6 to 4 to 5. The Custodian Warden one is honestly probably fine.
Yeah.
That one I think is a wash. Nobody cares. But the 6-man is a 6-man. Like, I don't know. It washes out. You can't get a 3-man, but you didn't take a 3-man anyway. But 4 to 5 Custodian Guard, people were taking 9 and 10-man Custodian Guard units, and you can't anymore. They're still good in 5-mans. I mean, both of these units went up in price. But they're still good in 5-mans. You just don't get to have this gigantic brick slamming into your opponent. Custodes definitely hit less hard than they did before because you can't have a 10-man brick. The Alaris Terminators still hit pretty hard. They can be a 6-man.
Yep.
And the Wardens hit less hard, still very durable. I think this is a good change to Custodes, honestly. Yeah, I think it's a good change.
It really shouldn't be an army where 30 dudes just walk at you. It really should be a bit more MSU elite squads of guys.
Well, 30 dudes can still walk at you, I think, but...
No, I'm saying like 30
but
bricks.
Yeah,
I mean,
like 10-man phalanxes of Custodes is no longer a thing. And I think that's for the best. Custodes were on the too good end. Especially since they are hitting all of the top armies and they're raising up all of the bottom armies, at least some amount.
Yeah.
I think this is a pretty okay change.
Yeah. Then the shooting matters a lot because the Custodian Guard unit would have all those shots, could double shoot, and have the reroll wounds access. That was just a brutal amount of damage, not to mention all the combat. So damage, like the height of their damage is going to go down, but you'll just need more units into that combat.
Yes. Yeah.
All right.
And they still hit quite hard. I think the only time you're going to feel it really is when you go into maybe Necrons, where the quantity of attacks is important.
Yep. Then we got the Virtus Praetors data sheet, changes 2 to 3.
Yep, they were garbage. They continue to be garbage. They now
It's so sad because I love them. They're my favorite Custodian model by far.
This is a buff to Custodes because now you can't take a 6-man unit of Virtus Praetors, and that was a terrible idea. So if it stops you from doing that, good thing.
One of those unintentional buffs. All right, then we have the Adeptus Mechanicus, an army that has been on the struggle bus for sure. They are getting 2 changes, which is effectively bringing back the old Skitarii infantry from the veteran cohort, where now they're back to a 4-up save, which they should have had the whole time, but they get their 5-up invuln back as well. So they're quite a bit more durable than they used to be. Still going to die to any sort of dedicated firepower, but they're also going to get cheaper, as we'll see in the points. So nice update for them. I'm frankly surprised that there's nothing else in the data slate for AdMech here. I really think that them, out of almost any other army besides Death Guard, and Votann needed some rules changes.
Yes.
So kind of surprised with that. This is a nice minor buff, but it's not something where I'm trying to... If you could run the giant bricks still, then maybe I'd think it was more impactful.
Like 20-mans?
For the 20-mans, but running 10-mans, it's a nice quality of life change, but it's something that should have been there at the start, honestly. Next change, though, is massively impactful.
This one also should have been there at the start.
It really should have been. Aeldari Phantasm. I know I rip my hair out every time I hear the word Phantasm. Jack probably does as well.
It is, bar none, the most broken stratagem the game has ever seen. Stratagems did not exist 7th edition and before, and since 8th edition came out, they have not been more powerful than Phantasm. Straight up.
Straight up.
Straight up. And it's 1 CP, it's spammable, and it does a million things, right? It lets them get hyper-aggressive. It lets them win every trade war because you commit to kill one thing, that one thing disappears, and then on their turn they pop out and kill you. And it also fixes any mistakes or any openings that you see in their game plan.
Yep.
It made Eldar into one of the easiest armies to play because if you mess up and your opponent goes to exploit your mistake, you just fix it on their turn. And you get perfect information about where they are, and they have to fully commit to things, and then you get to, yoink the football out from in front of them, Lucy, and then they fall flat on their face. Phantasm was horrific for the game.
They are. It's infantry now, so you're still going to see it used.
Oh, it's still broken.
Wraithguard, Warp Spiders, tons of Shadow Specters. They have a ton of amazing infantry options. This rule is still fantastic, and it's going to be used constantly.
Yes.
But it's not being used to Fire and Fade a Wraith Knight, which would have happened.
Yes.
Now, you can still use Strike and Fade, which are Fire and Fade.
At least where they are is where they are. Like, they can move at the end of their turn, and that's really good.
Yeah.
But at least when you go to kill them, they're there. They don't get to leave. Now, infantry still do. This stratagem is still broken, for the record. But it's broken on half their army instead of broken on all of their army. And I guess I will take that.
Yeah. But yeah, like things like Wraithguard, Warp Spiders, all that stuff's going to still be used in this time in, time out. So expect to still have to deal with this nonsense.
Absolutely. But before we move on to the next Eldar nerf, because I'm sure there's more, we want to thank Toilet Dice for 30 gifted memberships.
You, sir, are hilarious. Thank you so much for the gifted subs. Really appreciate your support of our community. We, once again, if you have been accepting these gifted subs or received one, make sure you click that accept button. You're going to get a notification from YouTube somewhere, and you need to make sure you accept it so that you get access to all of our awesome boring stuff.
Absolutely. So what's the next Eldar nerf? They were broken. They need more changes. What is the next one?
I'm looking.
You're looking? I'm looking too.
I'm trying to do a deep dive on this, and I just can't quite see it. Is it invisible ink or something?
It might be. Did they fix... They must have changed the Incarns rule, right?
Probably. You would think it would be in there somewhere.
They have to. They probably fixed... I don't know. This bit is getting old already.
Maybe they're rewriting the data sheet at the bottom of this.
Yeah. But no, they are not. That is the only Eldar rules change.
Shock.
Oh, maybe they're fixing the fact that Fate dice count as unmodified dice. Nope, they didn't do that either. Phantasm, I'll take it. It's still a busted stratagem, but I guess I will take any marginal gains.
Make their reroll a reroll hit or a wound, like any sort. They still have the best rules by far.
Yes, they have the best
stratagems, army rule. What doesn't matter?
All of it. Greg, see the fire person went up 30, and also people won't take it. They'll just pivot to one of the other
amazing
anti-tank platforms.
We'll get to the Aeldari.
We'll get to them.
They're gonna be fine.
Eldar's doing okay.
I'm shocked about that.
I am shocked about that. We'll get to our conclusions at the end, but Eldar's still doing really good.
Okay, Agent, you know who's not doing very good? Exaction squads. The policemen of the universe. Policemen of the universe used to be everywhere. They're about to be in exactly zero places.
Yes.
So the Adeptus Arbites, they had a short time in the sun. Maybe now I'll be able to actually buy a box of them somewhere, which will be nice because I love the aesthetic. But they are no longer the cheapest 5-man unit. They're 10-man units. And on top of that, they also go up a ton in points.
Yes.
So,
yeah, they're now 11 points a model instead of 7. Yeah. Or 10 if you take the puppo. So I guess they're 10 points a model for an 11-man squad. Whatever.
If you run the 10-man now, you're running the puppy.
You're running the puppo, for sure.
Okay. Now we've got Death Guard. So,
and just want to say, we're going to get to all of the super chats. We're just addressing the gifted membership.
We will be doing all the super chats towards the end. So feel free, please. We really appreciate all that support to us, and we will go through them at the end.
Yes.
Death Guard. They needed quite a bit of help, and they actually get a big update to their rule, which is very nice. So Spread the Sickness Detachment rule. During the Declare Battle Formation step, which means on a per-game basis, you can choose one of these rules, which is very nice, gives you flexibility throughout a tournament. You select one of the sicknesses below, and until the end of the battle, all units from your army with the Nurgle's gift ability gain the selected sickness. And there's 3 of them, so there's nice flexibility here. One is, while an enemy unit's within contagion range of your unit, -1 to their ballistic skill and weapon skill characteristics.
That is very good. So, I don't know if there's ways to extend your natural contagion range, but there are ways to put enemies in contagion range. If a Hellbrute shoots you, you are in contagion range. So if a Hellbrute shoots you, you can just be -1 ballistic skill and weapon skill if you're just hit. Or if you're near your, the Death Guard army at all, -1 weapon skill, ballistic skill. That's really... It makes it harder to kill them in melee, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Weapon skill modifiers are much rarer in this edition than they were in previous ones, and a lot of people aren't teching for like pluses to hit in melee, or they're just very rare in general. So you kind of get to replicate the old Foul Blade Spawn ability, where it's just very hard to engage them directly in melee, which is interesting. Then we have the next one, which is while an enemy unit is within contagion range, worsen the save characteristic of models in the enemy unit by 1.
Yes, that change is huge. They have a lot of AP1, a lot of AP0, and now it's just AP2, AP3 functionally. It also, if you reduce their save characteristic from a 2-up to a 3-up, suddenly cover can't get them back to a 2-up. I think that's how that works. I don't know. That needs a ruling. But this is very good. Being able to just get +1 AP functioning across the board really helps the fact that their weapons are bad. just not good. Just not good.
Yeah. Go ahead.
And also, someone pointing out in the chat, -1 ballistic skill weapon skill stacks with -1 to hit. So that certainly helps as well.
Yep. One thing to note about this is that there's a couple units in the game that have an ability where they ignore all modifiers to characteristics, except to saving throws. And unfortunately, the language here means that you will ignore this rule if you have it. So the Silent King Trajan, because it's a modifier to the characteristic instead of the saving throw. So maybe that'll be readjusted in the future, but just one thing to note right now. Then we have, finally, while an enemy unit's within contagion range, worsen the leadership and objective control of models in that unit by 1 to a minimum of 1.
If it wasn't to a minimum of 1, this would actually be broken. You just walk up and you just say, can't hold this objective, I'm sorry, unless you're OC2, in which case you have to fight with -1 OC. Like, you have to try and fight my objective control at OC1.
Yeah.
But anything that's OC1 tries to walk... Like, this would be the hardest counter to Lich Guard imaginable. You're just, OC0, sorry.
But that's what I'm thinking is, like, this one is the more niche of the other two.
Exactly.
The other two are fantastic and can be used in pretty much any matchup. This one's a little more niche, but say you're playing against Necrons where you're not going to really do enough damage to kill their big brick units. -1 OC on them is important.
This is a big rule for Death Guard. I mean, it is... Finally, they have a rule that is usable. Because the Spread the Sickness detachment rule was garbage, for the record. Like, it didn't do a single thing. And their stratagems were not great. This actually helps them out quite a lot.
Exactly. Now when you're in contagion range, you're taking -1 toughness plus potentially a -1 weapon skill.
Yep.
Or ballistic skill.
Or
a -1 save.
If you're in combat with a vehicle, while it's -1 ballistic skill, it's -2 to hit if it wants to shoot. Typhus is -1 to hit, so he's -2 to hit. Like, suddenly some things actually get somewhat durable.
Their stratagem is stealth. It gives stealth to a unit, so -1 ballistic skill, stealth. Like, there's a lot of combos here to help make them more durable. Which
they,
is very nice.
they badly need, for sure.
Things like the Hellbrew giving out contagion, putting things in contagion range is going to be very valuable now.
Yep. So, let's talk about a rules change that is significantly more impactful to the army than the Phantasm change. Deathwatch not even catching strays, just catching
them hands.
Just catching them hands, for sure. Oh my god. I guess they were sick and tired of people using the Kraken rounds stratagem on, like, flame weapons and
frag cannons.
Nonsense and frag cannons. So all of the rounds, Dragonfire, Hellfire, and Kraken rounds, are bolt weapon only. They did used to be bolt weapon only for ever and ever and ever. They weren't in this codex. It's a bit odd. Now they are. But what this means is that their best weapons don't get to benefit from them. And along with points changes, Deathwatch is looking real not happy with these changes.
They're looking at a much more narrow sliver of units that you want to run.
Yes.
Which is basically the bolter aggressors. That's the
Stern
one thing.
Guard too.
Stern Guard. Those are the things that pop out that they can actually use these strats. But Deathwatch are going to change quite fundamentally.
Yeah. Bolter aggressors also are just kind of done better by the Gladius anyway. Because you can put a harm assist in there with Bolter Discipline, and you can ragdoll people in shooting.
Luckily, they do tell you all the different things that are the bolt weapons.
Thankfully.
That's nice.
Yes.
Including a Vigil Spear, which you would just be like, cool.
Yep, yeah. So, Deathwatch are competing with we'll get to them. Imperial Knights for the hardest nerfed army in this data slate.
All right, moving on. Genestealer Cult.
Yes.
Basically, right below, not quite as good as Eldar because Eldar is just dramatically easier to play, as shocking as that might be. GSC were another army that was up there, and they had some crazy rules. So the free strat changes are somewhat impactful. They got some points increases that we'll get to, but their army rule changes as well. Yes. So, Cult Ambush rule. If your faction is Genestealer Cult, each time a unit with this ability is destroyed, you roll a d6, adding 1 to the result if they're battle line, and adding 1 if it's the first or the second battle round. And on a 5+, meaning that battle line units in the first 2 rounds will go off on a 3-up, whereas regular units in the first 2 rounds on a 4-up. Afterwards, it's just going to be a 4-up for battle line.
Yes.
That's a lot less consistent for bringing back your units. You can't reliably say, I'm going to get these back anymore.
Yes, which I think is an amazing change. One of the most frustrating games I've ever had of 10th edition was I tabled my opponent 3 times and still got beaten really badly. Like, they had all their units at the end of the game. I, surprisingly enough, did not. And
especially because in the old secondaries where you could just max a no-priz against that easily, it wouldn't have been the end of the world. It'd still be very annoying to play against. But there was just no benefit here.
Yeah.
In 10th.
I still think Genestealer Cult are quite good. This change does not do anything about the fact that when they come in, they can mollywop you into oblivion. So you still have to survive the drop turn, which is something like, I don't know, spitballing off the top of my head, half armies can't do.
They're still coming down 3.1 away. They're still doing outrageous amounts of damage. And guess what? A lot of their key strats are battle tactic. At least they're damage-dealing ones.
And their best units are battle line, which means they're coming back on a 3-up in the first and second turn, which is when it's most impactful, right? They drop on turn 2, you shoot them, so they'll get some models back. Now, this is a big change, don't get me wrong.
Yep.
This does fundamentally change how the rule works, and there is a failure rate now, and it is significant. It's not like a 2-up, right? It's a 3-up on turns 1 and 2. If they're going second, they drop in turn 2, you shoot them top of 3, now it's a 4-up. I get it. It's a big change, and I think this is a very good change for the game, but I don't think GSC are by any means dead. I think they're still one of the best armies in the game.
They still hit like an absolute freight train, and if you are not prepared for their drop turn, you're going to lose too much.
Yeah, you're
then
not
it doesn't
going to be
matter
able
that
to
they
take
don't come
advantage
back
of this
consistently.
for sure. You still have to plan with GSC in mind. You can't just say they're a dead army, because they're certainly not. I think this was a great change, and the points changes were very good, which we'll get to. But GSC not dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, then Atalan and Jackals. When they come in, they have to be wholly within 9 of the battlefield edge. Is basically the change.
Yep. I mean, fair enough.
Coming in the middle of the table.
Yeah. There are some people in the chat saying that we haven't counted in the Eldar point hikes. Eldars did get some point hikes.
Oh, we'll get there.
They did not get enough.
We'll get there. All right, Grey Knights. Why is this the stratagem to be adjusted?
I don't know. This one feels personal.
So it is personal to us. Haloed in Soulfire is the strat that makes a Grey Knight unit untargetable unless you're within 12. Basically gives it lone op. It's a 2 CP strat that was very expensive. Grey Knights can only make a strat 0 once per game with their Grandmaster.
This was by and large the one that you did.
This is the one that you did. Now, a regular Grandmaster in Dread Knight armor could make it 1 CP, but still, okay, you're trying to use miss every turn. You've got 3.1 away. You have a lot of amazing strats that you want to be using, so you don't want to just spam out one of them. So this switching away from battle tactic,
it's a bit odd, honestly, that this is
strange.
the one they decided to remove.
Yeah.
That being said, Grey Knights are doing real good now.
They're doing great.
They're doing good.
We will get there.
I want to throw in a little disclaimer here before we continue.
Yeah.
There is a tendency in all games, all kinds of video games, tabletop games, whatever, to overemphasize how important nerfs are, right? Your army gets nerfed, people assume it's going to have a massive swing, a massive delta in the win rate all of a sudden. Almost always not the case. For the record, what needed to happen to take Harlequins down to like a 50% win rate army, or an army that I think was still reasonable,
still
reasonable, was it had to lose a point of save across the board. It lost 3 of its dice. Both the good sub-factions were changed extensively.
You're an architect.
Points went up in some cases like 50%. So that's what it took. And I think I'm still forgetting stuff.
Yeah, it was 4 major nerfs.
4 significant nerfs. There is a tendency to say my army got raised like 150 points, 200 points, and a rule got changed. My army is dead now. 100% not the case. That is not how nerfs work. Slight nerfs are barely felt. Big nerfs are like a 5%. That's usually how it ends up shaking out, especially a month or two after the points drops or whatever, or points raises. There's a tendency to overvalue how much of an impact a nerf or a buff will have. I just want that out there right now because I think there's going to be a lot of people who think that some armies went from 55 to 40 or 60 plus to 30 or something like that. That's not the case. That being said, Imperial Knights took one of those nerfs.
They took it right to the knee.
Sorry, guys.
So Towering changed, and that is already a massive deal. The Overwatch change is a big deal for Imperial Knights. Now let's get to another big one. So how it worked before is you'd have your big knight, and it would give out a bondsman ability to itself and some nearby armigers. Now those bondsman abilities, which are very strong, only work on the armiger models.
Yes.
They no longer work on the big ones. Huge, massive nerf to some of the bigger knights.
Yeah, Imperial Knights caught the kind of nerfs that can actually shift win rates by like 10%. It's very hard to do, but I think they may have copped one.
Towering, on the other hand, like, it's harder to just table a knight army if you go first with guns. So it's not the end of the world for knights, but it means they can't table you.
Yeah.
So that one's a more mixed bag. This is just a straight up huge nerf.
It is a huge nerf. Knights armies will have to adapt around it. I'm not sure what they will go to. There doesn't look like there's a ton of options.
A lot of armigers.
But what it does mean is any big knights that don't give out bondsman oaths and are good are more consistent because you're not going to get blown up turn 1 if your opponent goes first. Canis Rex is legitimately very good because I don't want to lean into a playstyle that revolves around I can always see my opponent and my opponent can always see me.
Yep.
Because that is very swingy, doesn't really rely on my play on the table mattering as much. So I'm very happy with what happened to Canis. Like, him losing Towering, I think, is totally fine as long as you play with it, because he is very scary and he still walks over a decent amount of terrain and he can't be shot turn 1.
Yeah.
It's a big difference. It's a big difference.
I feel like the midfield brawlers benefit from this. But then you have Thunderstomp Stratagem. It is changed to Epic Deeds. You can't you can't modify its cost. In addition to that, Trophy Claim goes to 2 CP, and Valiant Last Stand goes to 2 CP. And 2 CP strats are very rare. Grey Knights are one of the few that have 2 different 2 CP strats. Mm-hmm. Most armies have almost all 1 CP strats. So making 2 different strats also 2 CP, kind of a big nerf in their kind of CP economy here.
Yeah, Trophy Claim was a bit of a weird one. That's the one, well, previously 1 CP. Get, I think, +1 to wound against a vehicle, but if you failed to kill it, you couldn't use the stratagem again. Yeah. So as long as you continued calling your shot properly, you could keep using the stratagem. I don't think at 2 CP it's that... Like, it wasn't that you got it for free or anything. You just got to continue to spend a CP on it. 2 CP is a bit odd, in my opinion. Yeah. Not really sure why they did that.
And then Valiant Last Stand, is that Fight on Death?
I believe that is Fight on Death, yes. And then Thunderstomp is turn your attacks Devastating Wounds, which is, I guess, Canis can't use it for free now. Yeah. I don't know. Those changes are a bit odd, to be honest with you. They're not the, most massivest deal, but the not having access to that +1 to wound is a bit odd without spending 2 CP.
The Bondsman thing is the biggest.
Yeah, the Bondsman one is huge. I expect Imperial Knights will pivot away from units that rely on Bondsman Oaths, and the army will just get worse. I don't think it'll be 10% worse. I think it'll just be, probably a 5% drop, something like that.
Yeah, we'll have to see how Towering plays out.
Yes.
And what type of lists come out of that. We got Leagues of Votann. One of the worst armies in the game has a massive change to their detachment rule. Previously, it was that in a Strike Force, which is a 2,000-point game, you would pick 1 enemy unit at the start of the game to start with 2 Judgment tokens, which is +1 to hit, +1 to wound. Now you'd pick 4 units. So a lot of armies have 3 or 4 critical units. They can now all just start with you getting +1 to hit, +1 to wound against them. In addition, they all every time you killed one of these, when it was one unit, if you kill it in the first or second battle rounds, or at the start of your first or second turn, you get 3 CP. If it's the third or fourth turn, you get 2 CP. And then if it's the final one, you get 1 CP. You can get a lot of CP, and that thing is exempt. That CP gain is exempt from the core rules exemption.
It says if any of them have been destroyed.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you get it multiple times or just the first one you kill gives it to you.
In that turn, yeah. Right?
If any of them have been destroyed, doesn't say during that turn, just at all. Depending on how early in the battle you destroyed it. So I think it just wants
you just get the CP once.
You get it once, but they want it to trigger off of any of the 4 that you kill, not all of the 4.
It's not that clear. But anyway, 4 units get +1 to hit, +1. You get +1 to hit, +1 to wound against 4 different units. This is massive. Because if they only have 2 or 3 that you really need to kill, you pick those, and then whatever trash unit has to go in the middle of the table for area denial or has to be a mission tool, you just pick that, and all of a sudden you can easily get the CP early.
Yes.
Which is fantastic for Votann.
Wog Tactics in the chat saying things like, we don't think that orcs are good. Come on! They're gonna be quite good now. I think they're gonna be quite. They're fair, and I think they're quite good. They're fair and balanced, if you will.
All right, and then we finally have Space Marines here. Desolation Squads, a unit that has been ended.
Oh yeah, it specifically says you can only gain CP in this way once per battle.
Okay.
Yes.
Totally misread that. Not my bad.
Yes.
Can only get it once.
He was so excited, he just can't get to
I
the
just
end of
want
the paragraph.
infinite CP. Can a man have infinite CP?
Yes.
All right. Space Marines, Desolation Squads, they were a terror for a lot of armies. They were... Tyranids basically had no answer to them. The Deathwatch ones in particular were brutal. Even if they remained at a 10-man, they wouldn't be using the crazy strats anymore. But now they're 5 models, and they also go up in points. I believe it's 200 points for 5 of them now.
Yes, they're 40 points a model. You will not see Desolation Marines on a competitive table. And I personally am okay with that. Bit of an aside, personal preference, I think they look very silly. And I don't like what they do. Like, I think they're just a unit at odds with what I like about 40k. They're an indirect piece that does, or they were, that did significant damage and had a rule that benefited them, that let them ignore the penalty if they stood still. Guess what? 40 points a model, and you can only take 5, means you're not buffing them up, and you're not taking them in 5-mans, because that's 200 points. So I don't feel bad that they don't exist anymore, because I think they're silly, and I don't like what they do to the game. If you have some beautifully painted Desolation Marines like our very own Castor Hushadar, I feel very sorry for you. I legitimately do, but I don't feel sorry for the unit itself.
It is pretty much not great anymore. I could see like running one just to try and chip away at things if like cheap chaff that isn't lone op comes in, but lone op is so prevalent, you're not really killing the important things that are scoring secondaries. So
yes,
I frankly think that we're not going to see them too often anymore.
Yep. And that is, I believe that's the end.
That is the end. So a lot more changes in the... First of all, thankfully we got a balance update, because if Old Phantasm continued to exist, it doesn't matter what points you were going to put on there. The Wraith Knight would have been just absurd.
Yes.
So
yes.
A lot of core changes here. I'm glad Games Workshop went back and kind of did... Some of these are a little bit of a question mark, like the Grey Knights and a couple of the Imperial Knight ones, but by and large, most of them are positive.
Yes. I think by and large, like, there were some little misses in here, I think.
Where are my AdMech buffs?
They're in there.
Where are they?
There you get a 4 save. But I think this is by and large, a very good thing for the game, and I'm happy they did it.
Yes. All right, now we're going to go faction by faction through the field manual, all the points. We're going to kind of give our highlights of what really matters that changed, but there's a lot of stuff for most factions.
So okay. We do have our very own Speed in the chat. He sent me a line-by-line points adjustment for Tau along with percent changes. So I will be using that.
All right, starting with the Adeptus Sororitas, this is an army that has struggled in 10th edition.
Yes.
Their army rules are not fantastic, but they're just pretty much a T3, 3-up save for the most part army, and almost every weapon in the game is amazing into it.
Yes, they're very easy to kill. And in the jump from 9th to 10th edition, they were the biggest loser in terms of like damage output, I want to say. Yeah. Sisters could do a lot of damage. Their whole game plan was like when you got within 24 inches of them, you were going to take the hammer. And that's just not the case in 10th edition. Repentia hit like wet noodles instead of removing you and everyone you've ever met. Yep. The multi-meltas were their real source of anti-tank, and they're just bad at being anti-tank platforms now because they're strength 9, whereas toughness is generally 10 or higher for vehicles. None of that was fixed here, right? You get more models, but none of them really do that much. So it does help, but I definitely think Sisters are, and I have a Sisters, I have probably like half a Sisters army, like really nicely painted up.
Yeah.
And I'm sad I won't get to use any of it. But I do think they're still in kind of a rough place, but they do get more models, so they can score more points.
Yep. Luckily, they have a lot of cheap units. The general trend here is that a lot of stuff goes down 5, 10 points, and then a couple things go down a little bit more. But by and large, you're going to have maybe 1 to 2 extra units in your list, but it's not going to be a fundamental change to Sisters.
We do have percent drops and whatnot from Speed. He's sending us a bunch of armies, actually. This is very helpful. Thank you. That he does our timestamps. So if you see any timestamps in the video with the funny and interesting names, that's not me. That's not Siegs. That's Speed. We appreciate you.
Paragon Warsuits is the one I want to highlight here. This is already a unit that John liked before for his Sisters armies, but it went down 40 points for 3 models. Morven Vol also going down, I believe, 10 points means that that package is a lot cheaper, which is nice because it's one of the stronger damage dealers here.
Yes, there are actually some units that went up. Crusaders, and looks like the Exorcist went up. The Exorcist went up 20 points. Crusaders went up.
It was 170. It went down.
No, it was 140 before, apparently.
That was the original codex. It went up with the indirect change to 170, I believe, and then went down 10 in this update. So, speaking of
failing
numbers,
me. Failing
I don't
me.
even know Sisters that well, but I think that's true.
Yeah, probably. Who knows?
But combinations like the Dogmata, Retributors,
that does sound right, though.
Like Rhinos getting cheaper is nice. But at the end of the day, I don't think this is a fundamental change for Sisters. They're kind of going to be around the same spot, and with some of the armies around them getting quite a bit better, they might be towards the bottom end, is my impression of them.
They needed some rules change, honestly. There's not really a way to fix their problems with points, other than making their points ludicrous. Right? If we're talking like 3-point Battle Sisters, that would solve the problem, but it would be stupid.
Yeah.
So I think they just need something to make multi-melt. They need their damage raised. You can just walk right into a Sisters army without...
on the charge, +1 attack. Just, bam, slap that on this army.
Got it.
Maybe even +1 AP, frankly. Yes. But they don't have that, so let's continue on to the Adeptus Custodes.
Apparently, it was the app's fault, not Speed. Speed is blameless.
Okay, Speed is blameless, the app is at fault, and I think we can all get behind blaming the 40k app, right?
100%, high five.
Blame the 40k app at all convenience. All right, Adeptus Custodes. All right, you want to go through this one, Jack?
Absolutely. So, Alaris went up 5 points a model, so they're now 70 instead of 65. The Blade Champion went up, I believe, 20. Custodian Guard went up 5 points a model. Custodian Wardens went up, I believe, also 5 points a model. So Wardens went up 5, Guard went up 5, Alaris went up 5, and then I think every one of the characters went up 20. So the Shield Captain Alaris Armor, and the Blade Champion all went up 20. Trajan, did he go up? I believe he did. I think he was 145, and now he is 160. And the Land Raider came down. The best Land Raider, I mean, not the Redeemer, but, the second best Land Raider or whatever, because it hits on 2s, is now 240. So that's actually not bad at all. Virtus Praetors, I honestly don't care what happened to them. I think the Shield Captain on Dawn Eagle went up, and the Virtus Praetors went down and can't be higher models. I don't care. Don't take this unit, please. It's actually less durable than a unit of Alaris, model by model. Like, a model of an Alaris is more durable than a jet bike.
Yeah, they really...
For some reason. They were just sick of them. Vigilators and Witch Seekers came down, which is dope, but, Prosecutors are still the cheapest, so you're probably still going to take those. The Forge World options are the exciting ones, right? what do we got here? The exciting ones are Venatari came down quite significantly. They were like 85 points before, something crazy. Sagittarum also came down 5 points a model, which is very exciting. And the Caladius stayed where it is. So if you are thinking of how do you want to build your Custodes army, you can include some Venatari and Sagittarum. They're not bad. You max out at 5-man units, so you can take like a couple units of those, and some Caladius is probably where I'm heading in the future. I think with generally the damage of the game by and large has been toned down. Yes, Adeptus Custodes lost their resistance to devastating wounds, and that is a big deal. Not going to sugarcoat it here. It is a big deal. Now, devastating wounds is less impactful generally, which means some amount of armies will cut it. I don't know. Probably not the 1 and 2 damage ones, though. They'll probably keep that. Yes, you are more vulnerable to devastating wounds, but a lot of armies at the top end have lost some of their damage, and then Custodes can thrive there. I think Custodes are fine. I think Custodes are even still good. I just don't think they're the, drive 2-3 bricks straight at your opponent and pass your saves like a champion. I think you actually have to play the game. I still think they're quite good. I think they took a nerf, for sure. There's no way they took those points and whatever without taking a nerf, but I still think it's fine. All right.
We got Adeptus Mechanicus. So their datasheet change was that the Rangers and Vanguard have 4-up saves now and 5-up invulns. So let's look at these points. Fuslav goes down a bit, so does the Transvector. Not enough for me to even think about running these flyers. Belisarius Call doesn't go down. What? How does Belisarius Call not go down? He has one of the worst kind of Supreme Commander type abilities. So I expected him to honestly go down around 150. It's shocking that he stayed the same. Then Corpuscari Priest, they go down 10 for the 5-man unit. Datasmith stays the same. Fulgurites go down a bit as well. They go down 20 points for 5 guys, which is nice, but they still hit like an absolute wet noodle, so they're just a cheap unit. Iron Striders stay the same. They didn't really need to go down. They're pretty cheap as is. Castlem Robots go down, I believe, 15 points. 10 or 15 points on the 2-man unit. Cataphront Breachers, this is the best data sheet by far, only goes down 5 points. 10 points on the 6 model units, so small decrease there. Cataphront Destroyers, same exact thing. I expected them to go down more than Breachers, and they didn't. Quite surprising. Taraxi, Skystalkers, and Sterilizers down 5. Cerberus Raiders down 15. That's nice. Running a 3-man is quite useful in certain matchups. The Sulphur Hounds go down 10 points. Sikaran Infiltrators down 10. Ruststalkers down 10, I believe. The Marshal, he is also down 5 or 10. Then Rangers and Vanguard are the 2 biggest points drops here. These are their only 2 battle line units that they synergize with a lot of the datasheet rules. The Rangers were 125 points for 10 of those guys. No, I'm not even joking. One of the most ludicrously overcosted units in the game. They're now 90 points and have the better saves. So it's definitely a unit to run. They're the sticky objectives scout move unit. So
that's real good.
I think you always run at least one of the units now. And then Vanguard are the -1 OC unit. And so they're solid. They're a little bit cheaper now. They used to be like dramatically cheaper than Rangers. Now they're only 10 points cheaper. So there's a real decision point between the 2 of them. But those are the 2 big buffs here. The Scorpius Disintegrator goes down 15, but at 180, it's still ludicrously overcosted. How is that the same points as like a Fire Prism? I have no idea. Then the Transport. The Transport doesn't go down. The Rhino went down. Had a nice decrease. This Dune Rider, which doesn't have the fire support thing, firing deck doesn't go down. Dragoons do go down. So they really want you to spam Iron Striders and Dragoons because at 60 points, they're 10 more points than an Iron Strider. They don't have a gun, but you could take the sniper thing. It's pretty trash. But they're stealth, and they're a T7 model with 7 wounds, with a 5-up invuln. You can give it a 4-up invuln with the stratagem. It's a lot of beef that you can throw on the table. These are expensive models to buy, but
yeah, at $60 a model, I think they're still. Wait a minute, I meant 60 points a model.
Yeah. You can spam these now. Dominus doesn't go down. What? Engine Seer a little decrease, and the Manipulus a 5-point decrease. My AdMech list went down 95 points. I asked John and Jack, who know nothing about AdMech in 10th edition, how much they thought AdMech went down. John was like 145. Jack was like 200. And I was like, those would have been totally reasonable and awesome changes. my list went down 95 points. And those are almost entirely in Rangers and Vanguard going down. So, honestly, my only thought reading this is that the Codex, which is on the roadmap for coming out in winter, has to be near, and it has to be dramatically improving these data sheets. Because I do not understand what AdMech received here. They were one of the worst armies, in my opinion. They're basically just a bunch of efficient data sheets that you can spam. Or not efficient data sheets, but like efficient durability, because they barely do any damage.
That's not a bad place to be if you happen to get like 5 other detachments that give you some amount of damage.
Yeah.
So they, these point changes are good for a future codex.
Yeah, so I have to imagine that the Codex is going to dramatically help this army, and that's why they're not doing too many other changes. So that's what I'm keeping in mind. That's like my silver lining here. But you're still going to spam Breachers. You have more battle line troops now, and you can put them in Dune Riders and have more OBSEC or OC around the board. But this is not the changes that AdMech need at this point in time, in my opinion.
They needed more, right? Yeah.
They needed at least another like 80, 100 points of points changes.
Because everyone around them is getting raised up.
Like dramatically.
Dramatically raised up. They are not as much, which means by comparison they're slipping.
I think they're in that sisters category.
Yeah.
All right, moving on. Adeptus Titanicus. Nobody cares about that.
They're not like legal for anything. I mean, you can take a Warhound if you want. All right, we are almost at the end of point changes we don't like.
Okay.
So there's some people in chat saying things like, they're grousing about the rules changes. They haven't gotten to the crippling points changes that will ruin Eldar forever. And I'm sorry, I just don't see that. Yes, their points went up. That was always going to happen.
It had to happen.
It had to happen. But here's the problem, right? Eldar is not the most broken army the game has ever seen, but it is among the more broken armies the game has seen recently. And, they needed more than this. I'm sorry if you have an Eldar army and you're looking at this like, I think the army's been crippled. It certainly has not. Some units have gone up quite a bit, but because of the depth of the bench that Eldar has and the amount of units that are that you don't even see that are quite good, they're going to pivot. So let's go over the highlights here. Yep. The Autarch Skyrunner, or the Autarch Wayleaper, is the good one. He went up to 115. The Autarch Wayleaper is still insane. You still take him. He still shoots good. He still is almost impossible to deal with. He still fights better than he should. And he gives you a CP every turn, which helps you fuel the Eldar War Machine. You're still taking him. He's still quite good. Avatar of Cain went up something like 40 points, something like that. I forget exactly. Still really good. He was a ludicrously undercosted stat line, and now he's just an undercosted stat line. You're still going to see the Avatar everywhere, and he is very hard to put away. The Baharoth and Voidsguard, Corsairs, whatever didn't change, and that's fine. Dark Reapers went up a point a model. That is deeply whatever. You weren't seeing them before. DJ went up a little. That's okay. Eldrad went up some. The Farseers went up some, but they didn't go up like ridiculous amounts. They went up like you're still going to take this amounts. Fire Prism, big change. It went up 30 points. You won't see Fire Prisms anymore, and that's not because they're bad. The reason you won't see Fire Prisms is because you have other options for efficient anti-tank in Eldar, and you're not paying 180 points for a Fire Prism when you can take others.
Yeah, me looking at as an AdMech player, I would grab the Fire Prism at 180, just all of them.
Yeah.
Just gobble them up.
Half of the armies out there would take 3 Fire Prisms with the strat support that they have.
Yep. Just their dash.
Without even thinking about it, and the others would strongly consider it. It is the best anti-tank, main battle tank in the game, and you probably won't take it in Eldar anymore. That's fair. That's one of the units that actually you won't see. You still could. A pair of them is not ridiculous, but 180 is probably too high when you have access to things like Hornets and Warwalkers that are substantially cheaper. If you continue down... All right,
I want this. None of the other ones matter.
None of the other ones matter. Night Spinner went up 10, and Devastating Wounds changed. It's significantly worse at splashing like 1 wound models to death, and that's good. But it's still very good at killing 2 wound, 3 wound, 4 wound models or whatever, and slowing them down. 10 points was not enough for this.
Its data sheet rule is fantastic. It cripples certain armies.
Yes. So a lot of these other units are not taking any points increases. The Spirit Seer, for example, is not taking any. And yeah, they're units we haven't seen. But that's not the issue. The issue, that doesn't mean they're bad.
We do see the Spirit Seer, too.
We see the Spirit Seer. That's the one I called that one out. It doesn't mean that they're bad if we don't see them, because Eldar was, at the very least, was broken. Like, broken. You only took the least interactive, strongest things, which meant their bench was very deep. Some of these units are still very good, the ones that weren't changed. You just didn't see them before, and now you will. And also the units that were changed are still probably the units you're still seeing.
Because they're still really good. So
support weapons went up, I believe, 20 points. Anything that isn't called a D cannon is ludicrously bad. But the D cannon is still, like, if you think about it, is an indirect platform that reels a hit and a wound and has on average 2 very good anti-tank shots. The fact that you're not going to see this unit likely shows you that, like, the Eldar bench is pretty deep. The Incarn got nerfed by 80 points.
Yeah.
And I think she's still fine. I think she's still quite good, honestly. 80 points is a lot. It's the single biggest points change to anything in Eldar. And it is significant. It's the other, like, actual substantial points hike, Fire Prisms and the Incarn. You could still see her because her rule is fundamentally broken. Are you willing to pay 80 more points for a fundamentally broken rule? That comes down to your army. I don't think she's like a Windmill Slam auto-include anymore, but she is still... Don't trick yourself. She's still very good at 80 points more, which is wild. Voidweaver is caught serious strays and went up 25. Oopsie daisy. Viper went up, I believe, 10 points there. Is still all right. Warwalkers are still very good at 110. They're still incredible at 110, actually. Their profile is just stupid. It's just dumb. I don't understand why it exists.
They're more durable than they should be. They're very efficient anti-tank.
They're just quite good. Warp Spiders only went up 15 points, and they're still very, very strong.
With the Dev Wound changing, like you said, those 1 damage weapons actually benefit quite a lot.
Yes. Warp Spiders are still very good. And because they still benefit from Phantasm, I expect you're just going to see more Warp Spiders rather than less.
Yeah. They're one of the best mission tools in the entire game.
Yes.
Top 3 for sure.
They move 24 inches, they shoot things to death, and they do secondaries incredibly well. They have a good armor save. Like, they're just an insane unit. And they got 15 points hike, and now they're just...
Yeah, I can't believe
a less insane unit, but still really good. Like, and they also, as I said, benefit from Phantasm, so they're really stupid. Wraithguard went up 3 points a model. Boy, howdy, was that not what it... This is the most egregious...
this and Warp Spiders.
This and Warp Spiders are the most egregious, like, under nerf in the book. Wraithguard, the Spirit Suit didn't go up, so they just went up 30 points. This unit is still very good. Even with new rules, i.e., you can't fire your guns into combat, and you can't...
The Dev Wounds.
Well, I'm saying, like, with the last change to Wraithguard, where they, like, actually copped nerfs, you don't get to resurrect twice. You still saw plenty of WTC teams taking 1 unit of Wraithguard. Some of them took 2, and they were very happy with it. I talked to a lot of those players, and a lot of those players were like, this is the best unit in my army. And... they went up 30 points, and their rules did not change enough. Devastating Wounds on D6 is the point where it's like, okay, now that's... Yes, you would rather it splashes into hordes, but the fact that they remove Custodes at speed is a big deal. They remove anything as a 4 up against mortals at speed.
Any of these Terminator builds?
Yes.
Really don't want to see Wraithguard.
Yeah, they got hit by the Dev Wounds nerf. They got 30 points. They're still crazy. They get Phantasm.
That was what I was going to say, is that one of the things about these 2 units is not only did their points not go up really enough, but they still can benefit from Phantasm, which means they are just auto-includes in my mind.
Yeah. Wraithguard were the one where we read it and we were just like, wait a minute, you just take a unit of these, minimum 2 units maybe. Like, they're still incredible. Wraith Knight is probably the biggest loser in the Codex.
Not because of it, the points increases.
No, it was relying on spamming out Dev Wounds and Overwatch and Towering, and all 3 of those got changed for it. And Phantasm. All 4 of those got changed. So Wraith Knights went from just the complete terror of the metagame to being a Look, all right. Look at me. Everybody at home, all right? Wraith Knights are still not bad. Eldar players will not take them. Do not be confused with that. Eldar players won't take them at all. They're bad for Eldar. But the profile of a Wraith Knight is still not bad. It has an average of 4 incredible anti-tank shots every turn against tanks, and his blast, so it is decent against elite infantry. It is no longer what it was. I'm not saying that, and it is not good in the context of Eldar. It is bad in the context of Eldar. But for the context of 40k as a whole, it is still a good unit. It is toughness 12 with access to -1 to wound, 2-up save with cover, and then it has -1 damage, and it has 18 wounds. So this thing is not dying easy.
Strike and fade.
Strike and fade still, and it shoots decently. It doesn't shoot cataclysmically, and as I said, it's bad for Eldar, but it's still good for the rest of the game. I think the main issue with Eldar players evaluating the nerfs is they don't understand, or they haven't had practical experience with what the average unit, what a good, solid unit looks like in other armies. In the rest of the game, they haven't played with, which is how you like actually get like a tactile understanding of it, what other good units, solid units look like. A Wraith Knight at 5'10 is a reasonable unit in the context of the rest of the game. And in Eldar, it is straight up garbage.
Yeah, my big TLDR on this is that their units themselves, for the rules that they have access to, were so dramatically undercosted that even increasing the 2,000 point list that existed by 350, even more on some lists, it's still not really enough, frankly. They are still one of the best armies in the game.
Yeah,
my opinion.
My estimation is that they are the best army in the game, but they are not. They are not unquestionably the best, right? Before, it was you would struggle to tech your army to even get to 50% against them, against a good, competent Eldar player playing a good Eldar list. Before, you would struggle to get to 50%.
Yeah.
Now, if you tech for Eldar, you can beat Eldar. But they are still just, I think they're still the best army in the game. But they're beatable now, whereas they really weren't before.
How I would phrase it is that Eldar players now have to actually think about teching for certain matchups, besides the Eldar Mirror matchup.
Yes. So I'm very happy with the changes. I do think they needed to go further on like the bench that Eldar has, right?
It's either do more on the rules front, or if you don't want to do that, these points had to be more. You have to look at the other armies that you're increasing, because other armies take some increases as well, and some even more than Eldar, which is ludicrous. Phantasm was not the only rule problem here.
But like, if we go through the big meta armies with Eldar, like they didn't go up dramatically that much, right? If you pivot Fire Prisms to Warwalkers or whatever, and then you pivot 2 Fire Prisms to 3 Warwalkers, and then you calculate the rest of the points, it doesn't come out to, I don't know, this is off the top of my head, but like more than like 200 points.
Well, just think about it. You're cutting a Wraith Knight and adding a unit into your normal Eldar list.
Yeah, that's basically what it is. You're cutting the Wraith Knight and adding 10 Wraith Guard and a Spirit Seer and keeping everything else, basically. So we will we'll see.
But there are a couple armies that are going to be annoying for Eldar to deal with, and we will get to them.
Yes.
All right. They did realize that Forge World is a thing, and those points needed to go up as well. So the Hornet goes up, I believe, 20 points. The Lynx goes up a bunch. It's like a Fire Prism kind of equivalent. The other Wraith Knight also goes up. And then Shadow Spectre is one of the ludicrously undercosted infantry units. That's extremely mobile. Also went up, but just a little bit.
Just a little bit. You're still going to see them. They're infantry, so you can use Phantasm on them. They move quite quickly. I mean, they drop in, they shoot, they move, they shoot decently. Like, they're pretty good.
Yep.
They're pretty good.
So, all right. Eldar, still in a good spot, in my opinion. Then we've got Agents of the Imperium. The Calidus Assassin was 115, went down 25 points. The Vec no longer works on non-battle tactic stratagems, But this is still a great mission tool. It's a lone op and can go back into reserve and come down later in the game to score you mission tools. So I expect to still see it, honestly.
I think the calendars may have even gotten better. I'm more excited to include her at 90 than I am at, was it 115?
Yep.
And having a fully functional Vect. Honestly, Vect is mostly there to stop people from doubling and tripling up on strats, and she still does that.
Yep.
Because she only affects battle tactic, but so do they. So I'm happy to include her at minus 25. I think she got better.
Me too. Thank you so much, everybody, for these super chats. Like I said, we'll be doing them all together at the end, so don't worry. We will answer all those questions, and really appreciate everybody's continued support.
Yeah.
All right, exaction squads, Control-Alt-Delete, and then Voidsman at Arms, which was going to be kind of the next layer of cheap generic Imperium unit.
Yeah, I think
Also
they went up 10 for 5. So.
Now they're comparable with 4 Servitors or whatever the cheap unit in most Imperium armies is.
They're not just better than the other options. I think they're still better than Servitors, though. But I don't know.
Maybe.
You get multi-meltas, you get one less body.
All right, Astra Millitarum. So this is an army that was performing around like 40 to 43%, I think. So definitely towards the bottom end, but not one of the worst armies. And they had a couple units that were annoyingly oppressive, which was the indirect fire. So the indirect fire generally has gone up here, not the Basilisk, but most of the platforms, Mana Core, and in particular the Forge Old ones, the Earthshaker Carriage and the Medusa Battery. So indirect, worse for guard generally, but now they have cheaper options for the most part. I think the other thing that went up was the Scout Sentinel, and now it's comparable to an Armored Sentinel, so there's a decision point between those. But in addition, like most of their battle line tanks went down, their cheap mission tools went down. Chimeras, a lot of transports in the game went down. Chimeras plus the infantry squads getting cheaper means you could spam out a ton of transports with good OC bodies into the middle of the table and make it very hard for opponents to deal with that quick enough. So I think Guard are going to go back towards their style of just flood the board with layers and layers of bodies. Not particularly efficient bodies, but bodies that can glum up the objectives, tie up enemy units, and try and bring some more Rogal Dorns, which also went down, into the fight as your damage dealers.
Absolutely. A lot of the Lehman Russes went down. They went down about 20 to 15 points on average. The Rogal Dorn went down, so a lot of that beef got cheaper, so you can take more tanks that fire direct, whereas a lot of the indirect went up. I was talking to John. He still thinks that there's a very strong list out there that just takes 9 indirect platforms and just says, damn the cost, I'm going to drop a Scout Sentinel unit.
Yep.
Because,
They didn't go up insane. They went up...
They went up a lot. Like, the Manticore went up 25, which is kind of whatever, but the batteries went up a lot. You will not see an Earthshaker Carriage battery because they are 5 points cheaper than a Basilisk. Fine. But
They're 15, I think it's 135.
No, I think they are 135? Okay, 15. Regardless. It's too close for, +1 ballistic skill and being a tank. So, Earthshaker Carriage batteries got points to the point where you won't see them. That's fair. Medusa Carriage batteries, if you're going for the type of list that tries to spam out indirect, you're going to include the indirect and you're going to cut other things. Now, I do think Guard have been opened up to be able to do other options, and I'm very excited for that. I don't think you are just priced into doing the indirect because it is the most efficient source of damage and also indirect. And
the vast majority of Guard players were not trying to spam indirect. They want to play Guard as an army that actually interacts in the middle of the table.
Yes.
So, most Guard players are going to be happy with these changes.
Yes. A lot of stuff went down. A lot of the stuff people actually want to play games of 40k with.
Yeah.
Unless you like taking 9 indirect platforms, you're going to be happy with these changes. And if you do like taking 9 indirect platforms, then God bless you. You can still do it, and it is still going to be cancerous and win games.
Yep.
It's just not going to have as much support as it did before, right? You're gonna be missing probably around 75. You're gonna be missing around 200 points of your list if you go for that. And if you table them with indirect, you table them with indirect. It doesn't matter.
Yep.
But I think Guard players are going to be generally very happy with these changes.
Gaunt's Ghost going down is really nice. If you don't have Gaunt's Ghost, it's a fantastic unit for Guard. Really highly recommend it.
And if you haven't read the Gaunt's Ghost books, also highly recommend it.
Yep, fantastic. All right, moving on to army that you love, Black Templars.
Booyah! We got to one of my armies. Let's go. I think Custodes is, but whatever. All right, so Black Templars. Very excited for these changes. Very excited. We've got the Gladiators. They went up. Whatever. It's fine. Whatever. They went up. The Lancer, actually, I think is only like 5 points more than the regular Lancer and gets a free multi-melta. So, is now better than a regular Lancer as opposed to being worse. So that's cool. The Valiant may have stayed the same points cost. It has a lot of multi-meltas. I would need to check that. But the Lancer went up a little. It went up 5. So the Black Templar Gladiators did not really go up that much. But whatever. I don't care. They still look very good. I think the Valiant may have gone down in points. Hard to say. I wish they included whether it went up or down in the graphic, but instead it's just red.
Green versus red changes.
Either way, I like all those points costs, except for the Reaper. I like the points cost there, so if you want to take them, you can. The Impulsor went down a decent amount, and also gets a free multi-melta. Okay, that's not a bad
Isn't it like
tank.
30 points it went down? It was like 115?
It was quite a bit.
Yeah.
It was quite a bit. The Repulsor and the Repulsor Executioner, I think, went up a little. I don't know. I'm not particularly fussed with it because I didn't really take tanks before anyway. Let's get to the part that is important. Grimaldus went down on 25 points. That dude is insane. He has one of the best buff suites in the entire game to attach to a unit. He has a bit of a limited option. It's mostly Primaris Crusaders and Sword Brethren. But in that unit, he does a tremendous amount of work. He gives them a 5 at Feel No Pain, or he gives them +1 AP, or he lets them advance in charge, and then all the time he gives them real hits. That's really strong. Grimaldus is nuts. He went down 25. Castle and the Marshal got cheaper. Halbrecht got cheaper, I believe 10 points. Crusader squads are now 12.5 points a model, and you can take a 10-man unit that is entirely in power armor, if you so desire. So you take 125 points of 10 power armor dudes. That is beefier than it should be. I don't know if that's like something to build around, but like you could just staple on 60 dudes for like 750 points. They're all in power armor. That's too many dudes for that few points. I don't know if there's something there, but there might be. That's weird. Primaris Crusader squads went down 40 points for the 20-man. They're now 14 points a model, which, same as the Crusader squad, is spicily cheap. Like, spicily cheap. If you have 14 points per model Primaris Crusader squads running around, oh man. That's
a lot of beef.
Yes. And Primaris Sword Brethren went down a grand total of 50 points, which is a big deal. They were not good. I ran them. I was so unimpressed with their durability per point. They just folded immediately. Being 50 points cheaper, you add Helbrecht, they're now 60 points cheaper. You add a Marshal, they're now like 70 points cheaper. It helps. It adds up. And the Land Raiders. The Land Raiders are also got cheaper. So that entire package went down like 100 points. Is it good enough? I still doubt it, honestly. But the Primaris Crusader squads and the regular Crusader squads have me really excited to build Black Templar lists. They really do. In addition to generic Space Marine changes, which will come up.
All right, heading over to another army that both of us love. Blood Angels. And guess what? They got the same kind of love. Pretty much everything down, besides a couple of units, and some things significantly down. You want to run through it, Mr. Jack, or you want me?
You can go for it, my guy.
All right, so Astarath, he goes down a decent amount. He's quite solid. All the Blood Angel characters are pretty interesting, honestly, this edition. Though you haven't been seeing Blood Angels do too much, so they needed big help. Mephiston down quite a bit. Dante down. The Death Company Dreadnought, which hits very hard in combat. I don't know if you're going to really see it, but still solid. Death Company Intercessors, they really like the change to Impulsors as well, so you could actually spam them out if you want to in a more board control type of army. Death Company Regular Marines, and in particular, Death Company Marines with jump packs go down significantly. Yes. Huge change. I believe there was 300 points for 10 of them.
I think there were more. I hold on, Speed's got me covered. I think they were like... They were north of 300.
They went down at least 40 points for 10.
Yeah, they... hold on. Death Company Marine with jump packs went down 5 points a model. It went down 50 points for 10, 25 points for 5.
That is huge.
Yes.
So, fantastic unit. You could run the infantry ones with Tycho the Lost, and they get advance and charge and hit extremely hard. Rhinos went down as well, so transports being cheaper helps a Blood Angels army, especially the non-jump pack units.
Yeah. The Death Company regular Marines, I think, went down 3 points a model, and they can join Tycho, or Tycho can join them. Lamardis can join the jump pack ones, give them -1 damage. It's a big deal.
It's a big deal.
Big deal.
The Furioso, Gabriel Seth, Libby Dread go down. Sanguinary Guard.
Sanguinary Guard, my favorite unit in the whole game.
They were a ludicrous 43 points per model. They are now significantly cheaper at 35.
I still don't think...
They're still expensive.
80 points for a unit of 10, and I still am like, I don't know, they're a little expensive.
It's especially because you can't take that 6 or 7 man, even the 8 man.
Yeah, somewhere in the middle.
You never really wanted to go to the full 10. But at the same time, this is the point where if you're a casual player or somebody who's just trying to have a winning record at a GT, I think you can take Sanguinary Guard at this point.
Absolutely. As you said, I wish there was somewhere in between. 7-man Sanguinary Guard was always the way in the last codex. Don't ask me why. It just was. Every Blood Angel player gravitated to 7. It was just the number. It hit exactly as hard as you needed it to, and it was exactly as durable as you needed it to be. 5 or 10 is a lot of a commitment, or it's only a 5-man unit, but they are takeable now, and I will take that. I think they are still a little overcosted.
Probably, but at least they're closer, and they're still a fast unit. You can do things with fast units. Like Death Guard would kill for a Sanguinary Guard unit at this price.
That's true. Yep. Death Guard would kill for useful units.
Sanguinary Priests went down as well, and then we have the Sanguinor, who is an absolute boss, also went down, I believe, 20 points.
I think he went down maybe even 25. I think he went down 25.
He is
so good.
Auto take.
Yes. The Sanguinor went down 20. Yeah, he is nuts. He's just an auto-include in Blood Angel lists, in my opinion.
Yeah. So some great changes here, which are combined with the Space Marine changes overall.
Yep.
Which is nice.
A
lot of decreases.
Yes. Yeah. None of the enhancements changed for the whole game. Just putting that out there now.
Yep. Which is surprising, honestly.
Anyone in the chat who has posted a super chat, we will get to them all at the end. We will address them all. Don't worry, but we're just going to go through the flow here.
Yep. Okay. Chaos Demons. You want to take this one?
Sure. So this was a bit of a gain some, lose some. I think they generically lost some. Beasts of Nurgle, I think, went down, or they went up like 5 points small. Maybe they went down. They didn't go up or down by a lot.
The big picture is that the Monster Mash list, where you could run 5-6 giant monsters that were all hard to deal with, that most of those key units went up.
Yeah.
Some significantly. Troops and like more of the unseen demon units went down.
Nurgle went down generally. Be'lakor went up 25. Shalaxi went up 50, which is a big deal. Those were kind of the build-arounds. And I think Keeper Secrets stayed the same. Lord of Change went up a decent amount. And did Kairos Fate Weaver?
No, Fate Weaver remained the same. And I think that's because the Vect abilities are less useful now.
That's true.
That's probably why. But still, Fate Weaver's still quite solid.
Yeah, Nurglings got cheaper for no reason. They were already the most taken, because they were the cheapest unit that could deep strike, and they would deep strike in and score secondaries. Yeah. So everybody would ally, like CSM would ally them in, and demons would take a bunch, and they just got cheaper. So that's pretty funny. Plague Bearers got cheaper. Some other units got cheaper. I think Fiends got cheaper, but I could be wrong there. Flamers got a little more expensive.
Yep.
Blue Scribes stayed the same. But the Changeling took a 15-point increase, which is, you'll still take him. He's still really good, but...
So, like, the good meta demons list went up a solid amount, but then now it has other options to bring different units.
Yeah, I know Nick is excited about Chariots, because they are pretty cheap and not vehicles.
Yep, and I know in the past he's thought about experimenting with Soul Grinders, which I think went down as well.
The thing is, a lot of these points were not, like, a big points change. Shalaxi got hit, but... honestly was the centerpiece of the army, and you might remove 50 points elsewhere in order to still take Shalaxi.
Yeah.
So we'll see.
All right. But demons still should be a very strong army.
I think they are still quite strong. Did Pink Horrors go up or down anything?
Pink Horrors stayed the same.
Pink Horrors are kind of a sleeper pick, I think, because with the ability to deep strike in with OC2, deep strike in so close and then be really hard to remove.
Yeah.
So
Bloodletters, Demonettes, a lot of the Nurgle units, those are the kind of bigger decreases. But this Burning Chariot, that's what Nick said, keep your eye on it. Chaos Knights. So generally, I believe the Rampager and the Carnivore went down, which are the melee, the more melee-heavy knights, which they already love the towering change because they can hide and get up the board more easily, the Rampager.
Yeah.
And then the other ones, the Brigand was pretty much the one that you always
saw. It was 150, it went to 160. You're still taking 6 of them if you're taking Chaos Knights.
Yep, and some small increases on the other one, the other shooting variant.
Yep, Executioners went up, I think, 15, which is wild considering they were the worst one.
Yeah.
Huntsman went up a little, which is weird. Carnivore dropped 20 points. So I think if Brigand goes up 10, Carnivore goes down 20, that does balance out if you take the War Dog version. Like if you take 6 Carnivores and 6 Brigands, not saying anyone would ever do that, you know, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't. But you did get 60 points back in that case. So, you know, things to think about. I think the Stalker also went up like 5 points small.
I think there's a reason to take the Rampager now.
Yeah, the Rampager seems pretty good.
But the mass armature lists, they don't care about the towering change, and the Rampager loves that change. So I think Chaos Knights are, in general, feeling pretty solid about the meta coming down around them.
Also, the damage in the game has come down generically. I think the damage in the game has come down, and that helps Chaos Knights. I know John is excited. John, who plays Chaos Knights, feels like the army has gotten somewhat better.
Yeah. Yes. All right, Chaos Space Marines.
So stay tuned to the War Room to get a in-detail video about his thoughts on them.
Yep. So we've got the Chaos Space Marines here. They were one of the kind of, along with Demons and like in that Custodes area, where they have a really strong build based around Forge Fiends, Obliterators, Abaddon. A lot of really efficient shooting and some untargetable stuff. But Abaddon went up 30 points. Obliterators, I think, went up 10. Forge Fiends went up 15. But then some other units like Legionaries and Chosen, various characters, went down a decent amount.
Yeah, Warp Talons came down quite a lot.
Significantly.
I think they came down
Raptors
like
too.
5 points, 6 points a model, something like that.
Yep.
So Warp Talons, stay tuned to Warp Talons. I think they're very...
Warp Talons and Raptors Nick's been hyping about.
Yep. A Blitz went up a tiny bit. Forge Fiends went up a little bit. Between the two of those, that's going to be like a solid 40 to 70 extra points that you have to find.
Yeah.
Other stuff got cheaper. You know, like the stuff that you really wanted in CSM went up probably about 80 to 100 points combined. Abaddon plus Forge Fiend plus a Blitz. But you can make that room and still be all right. And some other stuff went down. So on balance, I think this is roughly even.
Yeah, I think Chaos Space Marines are set to be one of the better armies in the game.
Yes. Because they were already pretty good, and they're the gatekeepers of damage. Right? If you damage in the game, it looks like to me at least has come down somewhat. CSM have not lost damage. They were one of the highest damage armies in the entire game, and they stay that way.
Yeah, they have to cut like one unit to fit the normal stuff in.
I honestly think they just redo how they're like building their list, and they still end up with like 2 Forge Fiends, 8 a Blitz, and Abaddon, and then you just have different stuff to make the rest of that points work.
Yeah, with Flamers and the Changeling going up, maybe they'll just stick with some of the cheaper units in their own book now.
Yeah, it feels like a side grade for them, and that's totally fine.
All right, Dark Angels. Following along the Space Marine trend, a lot of relatively small decreases all over the place, which add up to being you get a decent amount.
Yes. Yeah, you get a little bit here, a little bit there. It's not bad.
Yeah, like things like the Talon Master going down is nice. Samuel, the bikes, which you really just don't see. It's been typically the Terminators that have dominated, and you're going to see basic Terminators go down as well as the Deathwing Terminator squad, but the Deathwing Knights remain the same.
Yes, absolutely. So I think the army got... John's fairly excited about him. He's fairly excited. I think he wants to run more bikes anyway, and this just helps him there.
But they're in the overall general trend when we get to Space Marines of a lot of things are down in points.
Yes, which is what we're looking for.
Yep. All right, Death Guard. Probably, in our opinion, the worst army previously.
Yeah.
It's
they're
the hardest
not
army
anymore,
to exert skill.
But they're not like a good army now. They're just they're probably going to clear 40% win rate. They're probably going to be in the 45 vicinity. Somewhere in there. I doubt they're going to be 50. but they are an army you can play now, which is something that they were not before.
The funny thing is, they were doing better than a lot of factions. Like, they were doing significantly better than Votann, even though I think Votann was significantly stronger than Death Guard. So, people playing them at tournaments were doing solid. Not winning, but doing solid.
Coming close.
So at the end of the day, they get a really good update to their army rule, which is fantastic for them, and they get a lot of stuff. I think most lists dropped between like 250 and 300 points.
It's a big deal.
So you get a lot of units, and there are more options now. I've already seen people talking about running larger units of the Poxwalkers, because being able to stack that -1 weapon skill and a potential minus to hit somewhere can be very, very useful. The Terminators being cheaper, that means you can have more redundancy. Mortarion is straight up auto-include. He was already the centerpiece of the army, and now he's much cheaper. I think, like 45 points? 50?
He's 50.
50 points
He's 50.
cheaper.
He went from 375 to 325.
Yep. Plague Burst Crawlers got a little bit cheaper, 10 points, I believe. They were the other best data sheet. So you're just going to take them, and then you're going to fill out your list. You can run Plague Marines and Rhinos. You can run Hellbrutes to help give out the contagion buff onto different enemy units. Land Raiders are an option. Just jam them full of units and drop them out. Terminators using Rapid Ingress to come in. This is just an army that is significantly more stuff and an actual army rule to interact with.
Yes. They got a very big adjustment in terms of how good they are. But if you are concerned that this army is going to be OP, do not be concerned. It is still Death Guard, still the same data sheets. They have one rule staple on top, and they have more units. And that helps them out immensely, and it was a very good thing in the game to do it. But don't worry about them like being the new Eldar or something.
Yeah, but they will be much improved. You have to actually think about Death Guard now.
Absolutely. You do. And also, since everything basically across the board got some form of a points drop, except for, like, I don't know, the Plague Surgeon and the Miasma Fire, and the Predator. Sure.
Well, they didn't decrease the Ball Predator either, so.
Yeah. Because of that, I think there's going to be a lot of variety in Death Guard builds, because every unit got more viable than it was before, and I think that's super cool.
Yep, exactly. I think there'll be more diversity besides the Mortarion and Plague Burst Crawlers stapled on. That's just automatic. But what else you add to that? There's options.
Yes.
And Nurgle Demons got better too, which also helps Death Guard.
It does. Like your units of little Nurglings that are just going to do your scoring for you. They're 35 now, not 40.
Okay, Deathwatch got one of the harder rules changes in the data slate, and they also got points increases. So the 5-man vets went up 10 points, 10-man vet went up 20, the Proteus kill team went up 30 points on the 10-man, and then the Spectrum and Veteran Bikers went down a little bit. They do benefit from some of the generic Marine drops, but at the end of the day, I think they're just completely pivoting towards things like Aggressors, which actually benefit from their stratagems now.
Yeah.
You're dropping that Desolation Squad brick for sure. So there's a lot of points. If you run a Proteus kill team, you probably only run one with the Watchmaster to advance and charge, fall back and charge with them. And then lots of tools around that, I think, is the way you want to play them.
Yeah. I'm not sure how Deathwatch is going to be built. I think you're probably in the right vicinity.
I think more Inceptors stuff. You want them to be a really mobile mission-playing army that can do a lot of damage in one particular place. So that's what I would build it as. I don't think I'm a little more positive on them than John, but the stratagem change does really kill a lot of units, especially the ones he built and painted over the last 2 months.
Yeah. I will say Deathwatch is probably the hardest hit army out of these changes, and it barely came from points.
Yeah, it came from that rules change.
3 of their stratagems functionally stopped working.
And the Desolation change.
And the Desolators change, for sure. Like, Desolators firing their mini-missiles and getting, like, Kraken rounds.
Yeah,
can't do
wounding things on infantry on 2+ was absurdly strong with full rerolls.
Yeah, like the Vengeance rounds or whatever the heck they're called.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, next up we have Drukhari, another army that was kind of sitting in that area where Sisters and the lower tier armies were. However, their units were seen in Ynnari, so they're going to take a couple nerfs here, mostly in the Ravager, going up 20 points. It was undercosted at 95. It wasn't a problem in Drukhari-specific armies, but when you add in the concept of Ynnari and being able to take them, yeah, you saw them at Nova in particular, but a lot of people have been running them as allies if they ran Ynnari, so they copped a little bit of a nerf for 20 points. They're still solid for 115.
If you see Ynnari, they have 3 Ravagers in there. That's That's just a fact. I don't know if that's still a fact. I mean, Ravagers are still pretty good in Yunari, because 3 good anti-tank shots with reroll a hit and a wound. You definitely see Triple Ravager and Drukhari still. They're one of the units that like does things.
Yep.
They
But is really nice. Her plus Witches is quite a big change in my opinion. I think you're going to start seeing her, which gives you more incentive to actually run all 3 characters to get the benefit of having each of the different Drukhari sects. Every Incubi, even with or without Drazar, actually hit for the points you pay for them now, which is nice. Scourges went down a little bit. They're fantastic. Fire and Fading with them is great. But I don't see this army, kind of like Sisters, fundamentally changing. They might get a unit or 2 back, but they're still probably going to be in that bottom half area.
Yeah.
Is my opinion.
Yeah.
But Skari can totally prove us wrong.
Of course. I mean, Skari does.
He will.
Skari does magical things with his with the Dark Kin. My main issue still is that a lot of their units just lost their lethality. Like Incubi, I guess at 250 with Drazar, a 10-man can kind of hit, but they don't like actually hit. Like
they don't guarantee just obliterate a unit like they previously did.
Right. Yeah. It used to be like 5-mans would actually do appreciable damage, and they kind of just do 0. Like 5 Incubi, I think, average like 2 Space Marines or something. And then you add Drazar, you add the 10-man, and now you can actually clear like some units, but not like durable units. Witches are still output 0 damage and die immediately. Racks still have issues doing things. They, I believe, went down. So there are still issues with like finding units that can stop your opponent from just jamming the center of the board with durable bodies.
Yep.
And I don't see it really. That's my main issue.
Yeah. The top end of their damage went down so much that they don't have those guaranteed plays that cause your opponent to play a little more cagey, so that Drukhari can drop objective secured racks all over objectives and do mission stuff.
Yeah.
They can get kind of threat overloaded.
Even when Drukhari weren't that good, they still had damage output, right? 9th, like they still, you mess with their characters and you're gonna catch the horns or whatever. Like you're gonna die to them. Their units still hit like a truck. I just don't think points are gonna fix this army. I think that's like you would have to make the points ridiculous to fix the army, and that's just not something they're willing to do.
Yeah.
You just need to give everything like +1 attack and AP in combat.
You need to make the Tantalus cheap, right?
That's 100%. Triple Tants.
All right, GSC. I know quite a few people have been waiting for this one.
Yep.
So they had that rule change to how Cult Ambush works, which is a big change to the reliability of having units in the later part of the game. Their damage output is still quite strong, but here are the points increases. So Aberrants, I believe they went up 40 points.
I believe so. I think they were 330 to 370.
Bridge Runners go up 10.
Yep, Ridge Runners went up 10. You're still going to take them. Acolytes still went up. They went up. God, I want to say they went up.
I think they were 150, so they went up 20 points for 10.
Yeah, that sounds right. Basically, every unit went up like 20 points.
Except for the Primus went up significantly. He's 90 points now. Full rerolls is still fantastic. Expect to see 1 or 2 of them in every list still.
Yep.
Just to have those guaranteed damage plays. But quite expensive. Just having everything go up. I think we wrote out a couple of GSC lists. They're about 200 or so points more expensive, which is not the end of the world.
No. Like, I think
considering they had a positive win rate into Eldar. That shows you something about the army.
Yeah, they were pretty good. Yeah, the WTC list that we took, I think, got like 195 points more expensive, something like that. So the Aberrants, I don't think are bad at 370, but they might die for GSC sins. Like, they might die and you add an extra unit in and call it even. And at that point, GSC are still pretty terrifying, honestly.
Yep.
Regarding Drukhari, we have our very own Skari, the Drukhari expert, chiming in. He knows the army far better than we do, and he has put up results with them. Mm-hmm. He thinks that they've actually, they've definitely gotten better, right? Like, that's not a question. But he's very excited for where they are because their natural predators have dropped. So it's more of a meta thing. And also towering and indirect are far less prevalent, and that frees you up to actually play the game.
Yeah.
So very excited for that.
All right. My general impression here is, frankly, I would have liked to see a little bit more increases on certain units and some decreases on the trucks, the rock grinder. Have a mechanized style be a bit more viable is what I would have went for. But this effectively means that you have slightly less stuff and it's less reliable in coming back, but the army still hits like an absolute train. If you're not prepared for them, they will table you.
Yes. I think Genestealer is still one of the better armies in the game. Still one of the best, I would say. I think the easy switch is Aberrants plus the attached character become like another squad of Neophyte hybrids, and you just roll on from there. And you either try to murder your opponent hardcore on the drop turn. You're going to do that. And then you just try and pivot to play mission from there.
Yep. Like, I have too much stuff for you to kill quickly enough.
Yep. It could become like a couple 5-mans. Right? The Aberrants could become like 3 5-mans and then pay for the points for the rest of the list. And then you play mission very well.
All right. Grey Knights.
Let's go, baby.
So both of us were massively hyped to see this. Grey Knights are one of the armies that was in that bottom half, definitely. We rated them a bit higher just because a specific build had quite a bit of play into some top armies. Not necessarily winning play, but like they could keep games close.
If you extensively practiced the list and you took a very finely tuned optimized list, you could put up results against armies that on their face are far better. Yeah. That was it. You had to do those things and you had to play it perfectly, but then you could get those results. Here, the rest of the army is going to catch up to that.
Yep, so this army has outstanding rules. Mists of Deimos is one of the best stratagems in the game. They had the change to Haloed and Soulfire, but still great stratagems. And now the lists are going to have more options, I believe. So pretty much everything here that's Grey Knight specific went down, which is lovely to see. It really needed to. They're just overcosted for what they did. But you're out of your smattering of options for characters here. The Brotherhood Librarian goes down a bit. And I think because Feel No Pain Against Mortals is, with a Dev Wounds change, isn't as valuable, people are going to pivot away from those type of rules, making the Librarian even more valuable. On top of that, I expect Grey Knights to become more popular, and he is like the anti-Grey Knight choice because he gives you 4 Feel No Pain against psychic attacks on the unit. So,
yeah, if you will accept no substitutes for winning the mirror, right? Some Librarians will do that for you. Also, the zap is just so nice.
The zap is so good. It lets you pick off something in the distance, like a screening unit you don't want to have to charge into, or it can make a guaranteed, if you're going to hit like Drago's charge and want to whittle something durable down, boom, you go ahead and it exactly happened. We played Grey Knights versus Necrons. It's in the war room right now with the new points, and guess what? The Librarian did 8 mortals to the Silent King.
Zap!
Did he do 8 mortals? Yeah, because I had a
did 8, yeah.
He finished off the Wounded Minear, killed the other one, and then he actually had just enough damage to kill the Silent King. So, perfect play by the Libby.
Yes. Top line things, right? The Terminators went down 3 points a model. Huge! They were pretty overpriced. They had broken rules backing them up, but the units kind of underperformed. 3 points a model is huge. Paladins went down 6 points a model. Like, what are we doing? That's so good.
It's so good.
I felt so bad having to pay 510 points for that unit when, other than having some psi cannons, they were worse than Terminators, right? No lethal hits on the charge, cancels out the hitting on 2s, and then they don't res models. And
with a 30-point difference between regular Terminators and Paladins, there is a real choice between them now.
Yes. I still think you take one. I think you still take one unit Paladins and you give them the sigil, and they do stupid sigil things to your opponent. Yep. But the fact that all the Terminators went down this much, right? My list, the Terminators went down 120 points. 2 big bricks of Terminators and 1 big brick of Paladins went down 120. That's huge. There was no support to that list before. Boy, howdy, is there support now. All the characters went down. Drago went down 30? Mm-hmm. 30?
30 points.
Please?
So his Feel No Pain Against Mortals is less valuable, but that 6-inch charge is really why you take him, because you need those guarantee type of plays. Absolutely.
Voldus went down. Grandmaster got down. His free strat thing was only once a game anyway. I mostly took him for the ignore mods. But free strat did get a lot worse, but he went down. Crow went down. All of them went down.
Crow plus Purifiers, if you like that type of build, it's fantastic now.
Yeah, Purifiers plus Crow are 335 for 10 plus Crow. That is very good. If you could give Crow a sigil, and you can't because he's an epic hero, but if you could, that unit would be an auto-include in every single list I've ever written, ever. I don't even care if it's Grey Knights or not. The Land Raiders went down of all kinds. That's going to be a theme. Basically, the army that I wrote went down about like 215 points, I think. And those 215 points are more important than like other 215 points because they really breathe a lot of life into the archetype, right? You have 30 Terminators and you just barely squeak in some other units. Not the case. Strikes got cheaper, you can fit them in. And that means the list I ran was, 20 Terminators, 10 Paladins, the list I would run at least, is 2 Librarians, Drago, and then you get 2 squads of Strikes and a Custodes, which you just did not have those 2 squads of Strikes before, and they make the list infinitely better.
You just have guaranteed secondary play. Just whatever secondaries are, they're down.
They're yours, and you don't have to sacrifice your Terminators doing things to make them happen. So you get to play a lot more like normal of a game without having to bend yourselves in knots to play like some hyper-specific weird combo.
Yeah. If you're a more MSU Grey Knight player, there is a lot of play here as well. With Interceptors going down to 135, they're only 10 more points than a Strike Squad, and I think there's tons of play with them as well. Purifiers are fantastic. Purgation Squads, the 5-man is back. You can run the 5-man with the 4 Incinerators, and it is still annoying for a lot of people to deal with.
Absolutely. It went down 30 points for 5 because they went up 30 points for 5 in the last update for no reason.
Yeah. It's because they can access Indirect, but this is not the army that shoots hard enough for that to matter.
Yes.
All right. The Dread Knight, Nemesis Dread Knight went down 30 points, and then the Grandmaster went down 45. So there is some play there. The Grandmaster in Dread Knight is kind of tempting because he can 1 CP the Haloed and Soulfire strat, and that makes him somewhat more interesting to me. I don't know if he fits into the 30 brick style, where he doesn't fit into that style, but maybe in like a 110-man or even 2 at the most, he could fit into that type of style. He's a different tool. He's pretty good into hitting into monsters and vehicles. So there's a bit more play on the Dread Knights. I really just think they need a datasheet change to make their weapons actual weapons.
But this is one of the armies where that doesn't matter as much.
This is a board control army, and it does it supremely well with the Terminator bodies.
Absolutely. So I mean, both of us are very excited. I think if you put the time in, become very practiced, very good with Grey Knights.
If they watch your full hour-long breakdown of how to be good with Grey Knights in the war.
It's about like half an hour of theory and about half an hour of me breaking down a WTC game. If you get good at this playstyle, this army is now very good. Like, you do have to play kind of one playstyle. Although the MSU variant scores points like it's going out of style, so I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the army is quite good now if you are good with it. If you're not, then it won't reward you, but it probably shouldn't at that point. But if you get it down, it very much rewards that knowledge, that player skill, that muscle memory, for sure. I'm super excited. It's one of the few armies. I'm excited about a lot of armies in general, but it's one of the few armies I'm looking at with a spotlight of like, I'm thinking of taking this to an event. Because we got Crucible coming up, and this is on my short list.
This is a dramatic improvement. They are also one of the better armies into Eldar because they're an army that dominates primary, and Eldar are going to struggle to deal with that.
The basic Grey Knights were, weirdly enough, one of the armies that could keep it close into Eldar. They were like 50-50. You could beat a Wraith Knight, you could lose to a Wraith Knight. It kind of depended on what the Wraith Knight did. But a go-wide Eldar style where they didn't take the Wraith Knight was actually one of the only armies that was favored into it. And now that the Wraith Knight does not do what Wraith Knight did, Grey Knights, again, blanket statement, they are a very complicated, very difficult army to play. Not to toot my own horn, but they are an army that rewards playing a lot of practice games, thinking about your plays in very much in detail. And if you get that down, I think you should beat Eldar most of the time. I think you're highly favored.
All right, moving on to the Imperial Knights. So they took quite a bit of Dataslate nerfs. Now, in terms of points, Canis Rex either goes back to his original cost or is slightly more than what? Well, I think he was 490 with the points increase, so now he's 460. I think he's...
And lost their rules, which is bad. That's not good. Knights are the other army I'm considering for, like, the most nerfed in here. But Canis Rex by himself, very good.
Yep.
Because... yeah, if you're relying on trying to table somebody turn 1, then it's harder. I'm sorry. But if you are trying to play the board the way everyone else does, Canis Rex got better. It's not Towering Change, I think, that makes Knights worse. It's the Bondsman.
The Bondsman. It just fundamentally changes how the army functions.
Yes.
All right. But I don't think they're going to drop 10%. I think they're still quite solid. I think they're closer to Chaos Knights in particular as well.
Yeah, I would probably say Chaos Knights have jumped Imperial Knights for the best knight.
I think there's a lot of armies that still struggle to deal with like 10 T10 bodies.
Yeah.
With a bunch of wounds and maybe one or two. I think you could have less big knights for sure.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I think a lot of armies still struggle to bring that amount of anti-tank because knights have amazing OC and have a decent amount of armigers to just throw on objectives. That alone is hard for several armies to deal with.
Yeah.
So
I don't think I think they're going to hover around 50% is my guess, both of them.
Leagues of Votann!
Leagues of Votann, tell me.
All right, so this was, in fact, I think metrically this was the worst army in the game. They basically have some very poor data sheets. They took that -1 ballistic skill and weapon skill from 9th to 10th, and they just didn't have a lot of stuff on the board. Now you have a lot of stuff on the board. I believe my list gained over 300 points, which is fantastic, and they were one of the armies that got even their best unit, and yes, there was a best Votann unit, that might surprise you, is the Hearthguard, they even went down. So this is a huge change. On top of that, they got that Dataslate change, where now 4 enemy units start with 2 Judgment tokens, so there's less pressure to get as many Judgment tokens in the early game, because your opponent's key units already have the max that you can get. So, fantastic. Okay, Brokier Ironmaster, this guy gives +1. He joins the Thunderkin and give him +1 to hit. It's not the best rule, but it means you can focus. Your Thunderkin can shoot at stuff that doesn't have Judgment tokens because they're +1 to hit, and then if it's a vehicle, anti-vehicle 2+, so you don't need Judgment tokens on those type of units. He's solid now. He went down 10 points. It's fine. If you like running the big brick with him, it's better now. Thunderkin went down 20 points for the 3-man unit. They went down 40 points for the 6-man unit. Those 6-man units hit quite hard. They don't have great durability, but as a trade piece, as a damage dealing, they do quite a lot. So that's, I like the Graviton Blast Cannon myself. That is going to be 6d6 blast shots that are strength 5, AP2, 2 damage, anti-vehicle 2+. They pump damage into vehicles very efficiently. Fantastic. Berserks went down, I believe it was 135 for 5 of them, 270 for 10 of them. They went down 70 points for 10 models. I still think they're not good. But at the end of the day, you could still possibly run them in Sagittars because that also went down and not feel too bad about it. But a unit that hits on 4s in combat with no rerolls, +1 to hit can bring them to 3s, and they +1 to wound. They're okay. They're okay. Now, I still think they're not needed for what you're bringing, and Hearthguard are dramatically better.
Yeah, even if they're not good, right? They're 70 points cheaper, so that's something.
If Berserks are your favorite unit now, you can't feel too bad about running them, is how I feel about it. Einir Champion, I loved him. I started running Solo Mans. He was 75 points. Now he's 60. Significantly better. Fantastic. I plan to run 2 or 3 of them every time. Just a great unit. Their data sheet isn't amazing by itself, but for what you get, it's relatively durable, and those mortal wounds add up on the charge, and reroll charges just helps when you need to make plays, because this army is on the slower side. Hearthguard, go down 30 points for the 10, 15 on a 5-man. I was running 30 of them, so my list just on Hearthguard went down 90 points. This is the best data sheet by far. There's less pressure to have to run 30 of them now that other things got significantly cheaper, like Thunderkin. So you don't have to run 30. I still really like 30 because they are the best data sheet. But they're the one that, all right, my opponent has 2 Judgment tokens. I'm hitting on 2s. I'm wounding a lot of stuff with the Plasma on 2s or on 4s at worst. This is a big, big upgrade. When the best data sheet goes down by a significant margin, it's fantastic for the army.
How much did they go down by again?
30 points for 10. So
that's significant.
30 of them went down 90. Give me 90 points back. The Grimnir. It is not really seen because you can only put it in the troop unit. As a buffing unit for the troops, I don't care about him. But as just a 6-shot guy with 6 shots at strength 6, AP2, D3 damage, you could run 3 of these guys in a Hecaton land fort, which also got cheaper by 20 points. And Hecaton hit something, they had popped out this turn, and now they all of a sudden get reroll wounds with a potential +1 to hit, +1 to wound into it. That is a thing that could do a decent amount of damage. I don't know if I'm going to put that in my list, but it's something I thought about.
Yeah.
Hearthkin Warriors, they went down from 135 to 110, much more palatable. I still don't think you really want to spam these 2 units at most because they do barely any damage, but they sticky objectives. And so them plus Sagittars is fantastic mission play, and I expect to run minimum 1 unit with at least 2 Sagittars to just do that.
Yes.
Then you got the Hernkin Pioneers, went down 15 points for 3. Also a big upgrade. This is the unit that can go back into reserve. And now at 90 points, I don't feel too bad about running a couple of them. This is one of the things I want to add more into my list. So the points that got freed up, adding in some Pioneers feels like a really good choice as the best mission play for the late game.
Absolutely.
Call went down 20 points. So now when you add an upgrade, it's only 90 points instead of 110. It's a big deal. Because the champion went down even more, or not more in points, but he's only 60 points, I still like a mix of Call and champion. And then the Sagittar went down 20 points. 6 Sagittar build is 100% in. You can definitely go for that style, and I think it's quite strong, just through sheer redundancy. And then Uthar, he is still probably one of the worst characters in the game. He does nothing. So for 90 points, how is he still more expensive than a Call who is better than him? I have no idea. But he's still bad. But everything else is much better. This army actually plays. I think that they are at least like towards the lower mid tier. Yeah. At least. They are not the worst army in the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's a competition between AdMech and Sisters right now.
Possibly, yeah.
We have somebody in the chat here who, this is their first time having their army seriously nerfed. And I think this is a good thing to talk about very quickly, because I think there's going to be a lot of people in the chat who have not been playing 40k for eons and hasn't been through the cycle a million times. A couple things to keep in mind. More than likely, your first impressions are overreactions. Always happens. It happens to me, happens to Richard, happens to everyone. Everyone looks at it and they say, this is a huge deal. My army sucks now. Almost never the case. Sometimes is, sometimes isn't. What you want to do is you want to go back to the drawing board and build your army from the ground up again. Try and find new ways to do what you need to do. Oftentimes, you will still be able to find it. 40k is a very complicated game with a lot of rules, and changes to some of those rules is rarely enough to sink a codex. But sometimes they are. If they are, you can continue to play it. People will start to tech for you less, and you can do your best. Oftentimes, building a list and optimizing it fully and learning it well will get you up and over 50% win rate at tournaments. So try and build it from the ground up, take a step back, breathe into a paper bag a little, and then try and build it back up. Because oftentimes you'll find if you don't give up on an army, you can still play it.
Yep, absolutely. Great words there, Jack. All right, so that's Leagues of Votann. I'm hyped about them. They have way more stuff on the board. Their damage is, like, the data sheets themselves are still not great, but they at least have more redundancy and less pressure on getting judgment tokens early because of the rule change. So they're dramatically better than they were. All right, Necrons. Okay, this is an army that was kind of in that Chaos Demons area, Chaos Space Marines, where it's right there towards the upper part, but below GSC and Aeldari. So what happens to them? Well, Lich Guard take a big hit here. They were 190. They're 230 now for 10 of them. Crypto Thralls go up 20 points as well to 60 points. And so that package is quite a bit more expensive. But then you have things like Warriors go down 20 points on 20 models. And Illuminator Xeris went down from 220 to 185. I'm kind of surprised I didn't see Immortals go down because they synergize the best with the Xeris and are a different option to what else is there. But Warriors go down instead, and Warriors are amazing. I prefer them to Lich Guard. They are an amazing board control army. I think 40 Warriors is going to be quite common nowadays, and there's some other big decreases here. So the other big one is the Silent King. He goes down from 490 to 420. 70-point decrease. He synergizes very well with Warriors because he has the Ignore Modifiers aura. And so you want to mess with their OC? No, you can't. You want to mess with their movement characteristic or charges? No, you can't. He's still very pricey for what he brings, but he does a lot of things in different phases. And so he's still a solid piece, and he's quite durable. And you can bring back the Mineers, which is strong.
Yeah. I want to just sit here and think for a second. What, in the current game, because the top end of the meta yesterday could drop 20 Warriors if necessary. What kills 20 Warriors plus Oracan plus buffs reliably in most armies?
in most armies.
And the answer is not that many things, right? If you can kill it in multiple activations, no, you didn't. They healed too many times for that to work. So you have to drop it pretty much outside of like weird scenarios. You have to drop it pretty much entirely in one activation. There aren't a lot of units out there that can do it. If you have a unit that can do it, take it. Because otherwise you are going to be in some trouble if your opponent has like 40 Necron warriors swarming the board, being literally impossible to kill.
Yep.
Because they'll bring back 15 per phase on average in the fight phase and the shooting phase. They'll bring back 15 in each phase, and then another 15 by the time it comes back to your turn again. So if you go through it the hard way, there will be 45 extra guys in every unit if you think about it that way. Right? If you shoot them, they'll heal 7. Then they shoot them again, they heal 8. Then you fight them, they heal 7. Then you fight them again, they heal 8. And then at the start of their turn, they heal 7. And then they heal like another 6 or something. And so you can't get through it the hard way. So you got to go through it all at once. If you can take a unit that can do it, please do, because Necrons are going to be very strong in the future.
Yep, I think they're, with how hard some of the other armies around them were hit, they are one of the winners, in my opinion. And if you want to see 40 warriors on the board against new Grey Knights, we have that in the War Room.
Very
Click
close
the description
game.
below.
Very good game.
Warroom.vhx.tv.
11 models stayed dead at the end of the game between the two of us.
All right, what other things happened here? So Doomsday Arcs and Heavy Destroyers go up. Doomsday Arcs significantly. They're 215 points now. Heavy Destroyers are up by 5. So Heavy Destroyers are more... You can bring a lot more anti-tank with Heavy Destroyers than running a couple Doomsday Arcs now. In addition to that, I believe the Reanimator went up 10 points. The Doomstalker went up 10 points as well. So a lot of their shooting damage that was consistent in anti-tank went up a bit. The Monolith did go down alongside the Silent King. And then a couple of the melee options like Ophidians, Scorpex, Triarch Praetorians went down, but not enough for me to really be like gung-ho about them. I wish Wraiths went down. They're the one I like a bit more, but they remain the same. Transcendent Catan went up 20 points, so it's 310 now for the Transcendent plus the 10.4 of Feel No Pain, which probably just should have been an errata that it can't get it and just keep it cheaper. I honestly think that's the way they should have went, but it is an amazing tar pit and still going to be quite strong.
Yep. If you wanted it in your list before, you're still very happy to get it at 310.
Exactly. So some interesting changes here for Necrons. The Warrior playstyle is 100% strong. Hexmark went up 10 as well, but still it's good enough to run. No problems there. The Technomancer didn't go up, which is quite interesting. It is the better of the Cryptex as a whole. So I was kind of surprised with that one, and it's a fantastic mission play lone op. At the end of the day, though, I think these are all very positive in general. So fantastic. I'm really happy for Necrons and can't wait to put them on the board a few more times. So if you're a Necron player, this is like gravy because of the context of the game changing around them.
Absolutely.
All right, Orks.
Orks. All right, so Orks were stealthily, sneakily pretty dang good in the last meta. They had some natural predators. But they had some good prey at the top end, too. They were one of the few armies that could actually scare GSC. But they would lose hardcore to Eldar. The Wraith Knight was too much. Lances were too much. And the Eldar still has the Lances, and those are still very scary. And you still probably lose to Eldar. I would be surprised if you won that against a really good player. But that being said, a lot of the other armies came down, and Orks got a side grade. And that's exactly what they needed. They just needed to stay where they were and watch the rest of the game even out around them. Mm-hmm. And that's what happened. A lot of units went down, a couple units went up. None of them were by that much. So they largely stayed where they were, which was sneaky good. Now they're just regular good.
Now you don't have to be so sneaky.
Now you don't got to be sneaky. It's crumpin' time for sure. They still have issues getting above AP1. Knobs going down helps with that quite a bit. Their Flash Gits got cheaper. Flash Gits stayed the same, sorry. Badruk got cheaper. Captain Badruk, I think he went down like 15 points. That's pretty solid. Captain Badruk is somewhere in here, I swear. They didn't just remove him. There he is. He went down 15. The knob on Smasher Squid got cheaper. I don't really know if you I still don't think you take them. Knobs got cheaper, which is great. Trucks went up, so knobs in trucks, guess what, are the same as they were before. That's fine. Boys stayed the same. Boys. Beast Snagaboys, if you scroll up, I believe also stayed the same. Yeah. So some things went up. A couple things did. Kill rate came down. I'm more interested in it. It's not what it was in 9th, but I'm still kind of interested in it. Ludas got cheaper. Meganobs, I want to say got cheaper. I think they were 65 for 2, and now they're 60. They were I think 200 for 6. Now they're 180 for 6. They're pretty thick with a big mech in mega armor, which may have gone up, may have gone down. I'm not sure. Not by enough though. Like not by a lot. So a lot of units went up 10. A lot of units went down 10. On balance, the army stays basically where it's at, and a lot of its predators got hit pretty damn hard. As Wog Tactics says, Imp, not sure. Oh, he might be listing them by super faction. Custodes definitely got worse at dealing with you. No questions asked. They also got worse at dealing with other people too. Custodes would just ragdoll you. Eldar would just ragdoll you. Got worse at dealing with you. Should still have a serious edge into you. T-Sons also lost a lot of stuff, so they're going to be worse at killing you. There's just a lot of armies that are worse at putting you away at speed, and that's what you got to do if you want to beat Orks. And the game got worse at that. Guess what else? You know what Necrons really, really hate when they sacrifice all their damage is like 120 dudes in transports tagging you everywhere. Whether they kill you or not is kind of irrelevant.
Yep.
You will be tagged. Every unit in your army will be tagged with 2 trucks, and the boys just scramble and clamber over every objective in reach. And whether they kill you does not actually matter. So I think Orks are very well positioned right now, and that's largely based off the metagame changing. While they were, as I said, they went from sneaky good to regular good. So I'm excited. I'm very excited to play them. Actually, they are one of the other armies on my short list to play. Them, like Black Templars, I think.
Grey Knights.
The Grey Knights I already said.
Okay.
Grey Knights, Orks, Black Templars, Blood Angels, I think are the 4.
Space Marines. So we already mentioned it. A lot of stuff gets some small decreases here, which adds up to be quite a bit of decreases. So big ones here, Aggressors. We already just mentioned Necron Warriors. This is now one of the better units Marines have to help deal with that kind of beef.
Yeah.
They're also fantastic in GSC and some other armies, so expect to see this package more often nowadays. You've got a bunch of decreases on a lot of their troops and stuff you don't really see. A small increase on infiltrators, but not enough for me to not want to take them, especially because GSC and Grey Knights will be strong, and I definitely want that aura of you can't come in.
GSC still make you survive the drop turn. Infiltrators allow you to survive the drop turn. Take them. They also, a lot of armies have like repositioning mechanics or secondaries or whatever that rely on teleporting, and it's just like, no.
The Impulsor going down significantly does open up an MSU Primaris type of build, or like those type of bodies. Ballistus Dreadnought is 150 points for a solid anti-tank platform there.
I'm very interested in the Ballistus. It went down 20 points. I think it was fine at 170. I think it's very solid at 150. I'm very interested in that unit. I've got 2 on my assembly desk right now.
Desolation Squads get wrecked at 200 points for only 5 models. What else is impactful here? Shrike, I know that's something that Mark Perry had been experimenting with. Really liked his tools. So maybe something to keep an eye on, him and Vanguard vets.
Brutalis Dreadnought came down quite a lot. All of the Primaris Dreadnoughts came down some relevant amount, and I think you can run a Dreadnought like March of the Dreadnought stylist, and it would be quite good. Brutalis came down the most out of any of them. I think it came down like 35 points, something like that. Brutalis is now went from a joke to a real option to consider.
I feel like
it went down 50. Went down 50. Yeah. It went from a joke to a real unit.
I feel like Eliminators are always one that starts at like 85 and goes to 75 at some point in addition.
Yeah.
Just sits there.
Yep. I think they're solid too. There's a lot of good options. The Gladiator, for whatever reason, I mean, not for whatever reason, sorry, I know why. It went to 160.
Yeah. It was seen everywhere. It was the most efficient of the anti-tank platforms, but now with competition from the Dreadnoughts and the other 2 variants going down, it has competition.
Yeah. The Ballistus hits comparably, probably harder. and is tougher but moves slower. Yeah, I'd probably take the Ballistas.
I know you like the Redemptor in Black Templars. It got a little bit of a decrease there.
The Redemptor is quite good. It went down 15, which is the lowest out of any of the Dreadnoughts going down, any of the Primaris ones at least, but I think it is quite good. It is insanely durable, especially in how 10th edition works. So, -1 damage on a toughness 10 platform, 12 wounds, and a 2-up save. Being, what was it? It's 210 now?
Yeah, 210.
210? I would pay that.
The Rhino, it went down a little bit, which helps if you want to, keep certain bodies alive. Gilliman went up a little bit. What is 30 points? Something like that?
Something like that. I think he might have been like 360.
Yeah.
But he's still quite good. If you want him, you take him.
Yep.
Land Raiders?
Yep.
Land Raiders went down a lot. The Land Raider Redeemer is a spicy meatball right now. If you want to run a Land Raider Redeemer, it was already good enough to take to events and do well with. And it went down like 35 points.
Yep.
So
Scouts are still a very solid mission tool. You got Stern Guard. I think they were one of the few things that went up like just a little bit, 5 points. 10 points on the 10-man.
Yeah.
The Hail Strike, though, went down 20 points. It's something I used in my Deathwatch list to get access to extra AP on the target. With 20-point decrease, I still quite like it, honestly.
Yeah.
All right, then we've got a couple other things. Terminators go down a bit more as well.
Terminator Assault squads go up 1 point a model. Terminator regular squads, I want to say, go down 2 points a model. So the Terminator Assault squad, when you wanted to take Terminators, was probably the one you took before. I know it's the one that the Black Templars take. It still is, for the record, but it makes the regular Terminators a little bit of a spicier option.
Yep. So Marines aren't going to have Desolations, but this right here will probably become the replacement, the Whirlwind.
Yeah, if you want to run indirect as Space Marines, Whirlwinds will have your back. They're still really good. I will say, I think these are buffs to Space Marines. I think I'm quite excited for these. Go up. Aggressors got cheaper.
Yes, they did. That was the first thing I mentioned.
First thing you mentioned? All right. I was still like on cloud 9.
Yeah.
Aggressors are real good. They're really, really good.
You were still crumping in your mind. All right, Space Wolves. One of the other unique chapters that was struggling, like Blood Angels, but significant decreases here to pretty much everything. Huge decreases to Logan Grimnar. Bjorn went down like 40 points. A lot of these characters are completely viable now. In addition to that, I believe Thunderwolf Cavalry. They go down to 30 points per model for a 4-up invuln, 4-wound thing. They don't hit that hard outside of being, actually making the charge, but it's still a fast-moving, relatively durable unit, and now it can just act as a skirmisher at this point. How cheap it is.
Well, there's also a certain points cost that fast, durable units have, where they become spammable.
Yeah.
And Thunderwolf at 35, we're not it. Or 33.33 or whatever. Thunderwolf at 30, kinda are. So 18 Thunderwolves being 540 points is really good. Really good.
Just a lot of wounds on the table with 4-up invuln.
You get a lot of stuff. You get an amount of stuff that is not ignorable. And yeah, you just get a lot of things on the table as Space Wolves now. I think Space Wolves got a lot better.
Yeah, I know Quinn is very excited to put them on the table.
He's debating taking them to Crucible, honestly.
Yesterday was a game with the older Space Wolf rules, but don't worry, we will have one with the updated points soon.
Yes.
All right. And then Tau Empire.
All right, go off, King.
That I know and love, and I think was kind of performing worse than some of their data sheets would allow. Now, like Grey Knights, there was a particular build that could punch up. There wasn't much outside of that. Now there actually is more outside of that one particular build. So, Tau are in the set of factions that was underperforming, but then they buffed their best units and other ones. So now they have more options, and you could still run the best list with more stuff. All right. So Anshi goes down a little bit, whatever. Breachers go down 25 points, which is a big deal. They are the best of the troops. Strike squads kind of are terrible. But Breacher teams are solid. They get reroll wounds, and they're just efficient. Good OC. So it's something that can act as a board control unit, and it really likes the drop to Devilfish. They go from 95 to 75. So the whole package now is 165 points, which puts it comparable with a Ghost Keel. And at that point, you could just have a bunch of Breacher Devilfish combos and just kind of like Orks do, where you just drown them in bodies. and tie things up with them.
How much is a Breacher Fish with a Fireblade, right? It's
The Fireblade is 40, so it'd be 205.
30 plus 75. 205 is legitimately cheap. Like, every part of that combo went down.
Yep. And the thing is, a Devilfish is only 20 points more than a Piranha. You get extra toughness, 6 extra wounds. You still have the same amount of Secret Missiles, and you get an accelerated burst and some random shots instead of the 1 fusion shot. You don't have Scout Move unless you put Pathfinders in it, but like there's definite play here. Then Broadsides, they go down as well, 20 points per model. The towering change is a little weird with them, as well as the Dev Wounds. So therefore, Feel No Pain mattered against Dev Wounds, but now it's pretty relevant. And the towering change, there's none of those big Titanic things that they're going to easily be able to take down, but as soon as they touch terrain, then your broadsides pop off, and they're at a price point that is completely reasonable for the profile that you get, because you get a bunch of missile shots as well, and a plasma shot. They put out a good amount of damage for 90 points, so I think they're perfectly reasonable. If you like broadsides, this is a fantastic time to run.
They don't break the rest of your list to include them, and that means that you can just include them as a, hey, if you want to rush me down, buddy, you're eating broadsides kind of piece.
Fireblade went down 10. He's a great caddy if you want to run Breachers to hold through Unity Devastation, so you get lethal hits for your Crisis units. Commander Farsight dropped 30 points. I already liked him, and he was competitive with the Cold Star. At 90 points, he is cheap as chips. He can just swap in and out of there. He also offers a different tool with potential tank shock access with his sword, and just having a melee threat. Cold Star Commander drops down 15 points. The Crisis Commander drops 20 points. The Enforcer drops 35 points. I don't think that's still enough to get him to be better than the Cold Star or Farsight, but you could at least consider him and not feel too bad about it. Shadow Sun drops 40 points. 40. She's a great option now. I had stopped running her because I thought it was just a little too pricey. At 100 points now, once again, I'm tempted. It's a lone up, reroll 1's aura, so I don't have to worry about Tetras popping out. And the CP regen on using strats like Strike and Fade, which is really the only strat. Speaking of which, that's a huge buff for Tau, not being able to have opponents modify the CP cost of it. Then Crisis Battlesuits, the by far best data sheet here. Down 15 for 3, down 30 for 6. Fantastic. Dark Strider down 15. Really good option into Grey Knights, GSC, other things, because of that, no, you can't come within 12. Ghost Keel went down 10, so once again, it's very comparable with a Breacher Fish, depending if you want to go for durability versus just bodies and objective control. Hammerhead went down 15, I believe. The Crew Carnivores went down a lot, but just run the Breachers or something else. You don't need Kroot in this army. Kroot Hounds are still cheap. They didn't go down. Longstrike went down 30 points. He's just slightly better than a Hammerhead, so totally fine to run him. Pathfinder team went down 30 points. They were 120, ludicrously overcosted. Now them and Darkstrider is very similar to a Fireblade and the Breachers. So very cool there. Riptide went down 55 points. Huge change there. It's only 20 points more expensive than a Ghost Keel. It's 14 wounds at like T9. It's quite solid. You get a bunch of extra shots with the Twin Plasma as well as, or Fusion, as well as the missile drones that accompany it. So it's a good fire support platform, and it allows Tau to actually have a more MSU playstyle if you want. Because effectively it's the equivalent of 3 Crisis units. Now, 3 Crisis units shoot harder, but the Riptide has maybe somewhat better defense. I still think I prefer Crisis suits, but it's a different option, especially because it's AP3 and flat 4 damage. Yeah. Stealth suits go down. Amazing option as well. You're still going to be running them. And yeah, Tower in a fantastic spot. They have way more stuff, and you have options. You can build a mechanized list, you could spam Crisis suits if you want to, or you can do a mix of them.
Yep. The Storm Surge came down 65, lost what Towering does, so is garbage.
You're not seeing that. You're not seeing that. All right, so that's Tau. Very positive on Tau.
All right, Thousand Suns. Not going to sugarcoat this. This is a nerf. This hits. This is a lot of points. Armon went up, I don't know, like every character went up like 20. Magnus went up 30. Infernal Master went up 15. Exalted Sorcerer on Disc went up 10. Exalted Sorcerer Regular went up 10. Armon went up. I think he was 115 on disc. He's now 25 points more expensive. Rubrics went up 2 points per model. The Mutalith went up 20. Scarab Occult Terminators went up 2 points a model. Thousands and Cultists actually came down, I think. I think they came down a half point a model. The Demon Prince on foot came down 30 points. The Demon Prince with wings came down. I don't care if it went up or came down. You're taking the foot one. If Riley is still listening, you try and build something around the Demon Prince. The Demon Prince on foot went down 30 and is quite solid. It's really good, actually. I wanted to fit it in my list before, but at 210, it was just not possible. The Defiler, I straight up don't care. The Land Raider came down, which is solid, but you're not making the best use out of it, out of all of your armies. Out of all the armies that get Land Raiders, the Predators and the Mauler Fiend did things, I'm sure. The Thousand Sun Sorcerer went up 10 points a model. The Thousand Sun Sorcerer and Terminator armor went up 10 points a model. And the Vindicator is still a Vindicator. So here's the thing, right? Every unit you want to take has gone up a non-zero amount of points. That hurts. You're still basing the list around Magnus, because Magnus at 440, you're still taking it. You're still taking him. He's nuts. He personally is still one of the best characters in the game. 440, going up 30 points is not going to change whether you include Magnus. And Magnus is the centerpiece of the list. So if you're looking to build an army, build around Magnus, throw in a Demon Prince, see where that gets you. Everyone in the chat, we are going to get to every super chat. Don't worry. We're just going to do them all at the end. Mm-hmm. So those are the positives, right? Magnus, still really, really good. They didn't make him like 600 points or something where you're like, oh, even though he's the thing my army does, I'm not taking him. That's the level of points they would need to do for you to just not take the centerpiece of your army. So you're going to take him. And you're probably going to take a Demon Prince. Demon Princes at 180 are not bad. You can go a Monster Mash style where you take multiple Demon Princes, Magnus, multiple Mutaliths, and sure, it went up some, but it went down some, and you'll figure it out in the wash. You get a decent amount of Cabal points. They're pretty tough. I just thought of that off the top of my head. No idea if that's good. Give it a try. You can just take a less strong version of the list that's been thrown around, the Vic Vijay style of list, and that and the Arn from Team Germany style of list. That list did get about 300 points more expensive. That's kind of rough. That list in particular, I think, went up about 300 points because it's relying on every single unit that went up, right? 25 on Armon, 30 on Magnus, 10 on every single character, 10 on every single unit, and that adds up really fast. But I still think rubrics with an attached character are still pretty good. They're just not ludicrous the way they were before. I think Thousand Suns can pivot off this and figure it out. I think you want to go a hybrid style, like big boy, little boy list. You can try that out, see what that goes for. I'm going to be experimenting with it. I think there's still plenty of stuff here. I'd be surprised if Thousand Suns drop below a 50% win rate off this.
They still have amazing rules.
Yes.
Like the damage output on those rule combos. They will have less Cabal points, though, so that's going to be interesting.
And a great shout out from Speed that the Scarab Cult Terminators do more damage because they have devastating wounds when you do the combo, the Wombo combo. They have devastating wounds and damage 1. And devastating wounds on damage 1 is better than it was before because you weren't spilling damage anyway, and now you ignore mortal wound defense. So that actually helps. Probably the 10 brick of Terminators is where you go to. Spamming out a whole lot of units that all got a little bit more expensive is very bad when every unit went up. So probably taking big units that each went up a little rather than a million little units that each went up a little, probably where you're going to be at. So probably Magnus, Terminators, some amount of I think at least one Demon Prince is pretty good. The Hellbrute can compensate for a lack of... can you scroll up see if the Hellbrute went up or down?
No, it went down, right?
Thousand Suns Hellbrute.
Oh, no, theirs didn't.
It didn't. It stayed the same. Yeah. The Hellbrute can compensate for the fact that because you have fewer characters, you're getting less Cabal points. The Hellbrute is actually quite good, in my opinion, I think. You can get quite a few Cabal points off it. So try and go in that direction. That's where I'm starting, back on the Terminator, back on the Magnus train, because they went up relatively less. And then I'm throwing in a Demon Prince for surezies. I'm going to try out a Hellbrute, see if that's worth it, and then take support.
Cool. Heading over Tyranids, this has been a wild ride for Tyranids. Old points, Codex points, new points. So this has been a crazy and wild time for Tyranids. A lot of stuff that went down in the Codex by a small amount went back up, or some things got hit exceedingly hard.
Yeah,
so
I don't think they should have made this supersede the Codex. For the biggest loser here, and probably the biggest loser out of a single unit in the entire game, is the Tyrannifex. The Tyrannifex fundamentally changed between the Index and the Codex. One of the only units to do so. It lost -1 damage. It gained something that wasn't -1 damage. It got substantially worse. It got priced like it in the new book, I think. It went up 45 points, maybe 35. Something like a lot, but this does not reflect where its datasheet is now. This reflects where its datasheet was. I think that the Codex should have superseded this. I'm not really sure why
these
they did
points
this.
do supersede the Codex. It's written into the Codex.
Yes, these are the points you're playing with. The Codex is superseded by these rules. I just think it shouldn't have been, at least for the first iteration of this.
The Tyrants go up, Zoanthropes go up significantly. I believe 40 points on the 6-model unit. You have things like there's the Tyrannifex. The Harpy is another one that went up significantly. I know it was something John was looking at, and then all of a sudden today, boom, not really feeling the Harpy anymore. But just a lot of increases. So Tyranids, like right when the Codex came out, it looked like they were going to just be able to spam good amount of damage and then tons of cheap units. Now they're going to have quite a few less units. But John still expects them to be quite strong with the rules that they have in the Codex. So this shouldn't be the end of Tyranids. It's just that they're probably going to remain around that 50%, whereas he was thinking they were going to be possibly top 3 army in the game previously.
Yeah.
All right. So that's Tyranids. Then this is all their enhancements for the first time.
Yep. They didn't like adjust the points. They're just new, so they put them in red.
And last but not least, before we do our recap, as well as all those super chats.
Yep. So World Eaters were an army that actually had pretty decent rules. They had good rules to go off of, and they had all right data sheets. I'm not going to say like great, but they at least killed stuff, right? They didn't have the Sisters or the Drukhari problem where they just didn't kill things. So what they were was insanely overcosted, like ludicrously, like 60 point per model exalted 8-bound. Like, what did they do to you? Level of overcosted. World Eaters were crazy. Their points were insane. They did not make any sense at all. So you basically had decent rules. You had good rules, decent units, but you just had like way fewer of them than you should. This, to some extent, does fix that. Khorne Berserkers getting cheaper and Rhinos getting cheaper means the Khorne Berserker Rhino package is a lot cheaper. I know a lot of people like that. I haven't played with it yet, but I've heard good things. So that's a big deal. Lord Invocatus getting cheaper. I like that. I ran him by himself, and he scouted, and he gave 2 units scout, and you could get up the board really quickly. Like, you just give 20 Terminators scout. Well, guess what? That's going to cost you like 50 fewer points now. Or something. He's like 35 cheaper, I think, and the Terminators are each 10 points cheaper. So Terminators are still where it's at, but 8-bound and Exalted 8-bound make an amazing case for themselves now. Exalted 8-bound are now 50 points a model, still overcosted. They did come down 60 points, still overcosted by a significant amount. 8-bound are also overcosted by a significant amount, if anyone's keeping track. They're 45 points a model, and they shouldn't be. But you can now take them if you want to. It's the case of like the Berserks, right?
Yep.
If they are a unit you enjoy, you can take them. It's fine. It's not... Exalted 8-bound and like Sanguinary Guard before, for example, were units that were so overcosted, you just couldn't take them. And now you kind of can. I still think they need to come down by as much as they did almost. I think Exalted 8-bound should be like 6 for like, I don't know, 240 or something. I think they have a 3-up save. Maybe they changed that in the edition. But like, I think they're still pretty heavily overcosted. Unfortunate, but this gets them closer to where they should be. Jackals came down. The Demon Prince came down. So that Jackal Demon Prince combo to have 120 models with a 4-up invul and 5-up feel no pain, because their 6-up goes to a 5-up with the army rule. That got it substantially cheaper. You can actually, I would personally run that. It's 840 points if I've done my math off the top of my head correctly for the Jackals. So it's 1,040 for that plus the Demon Prince, and 1,065 for that with Helm of Breeze and Ire. And that's about half of the army, and you get 120 dudes with a 4-up armor, 4-up invul and 5-up feel no pain. And a lot of blast splash mortals went down because that doesn't exist anymore. So you're not just going to lose entire units at a clip. And I think that's quite that combination I think is quite strong. Whether or not that's how people want to play the game, it's up to you. But I do think that 120 Jackals plus a Demon Prince plus Angron is a very solid start to a list. The Lord of Skulls also came down, which is great because I think the Lord of Skulls plus Angron is a great package for World Leaders because they're lacking in other options. There's not that many data sheets here. And Angron gives the Lord of Skulls rerolls to hit in shooting, just not on the first turn. His rule is worded very weirdly. It triggers at the start of the charge phase, but then it lasts till the next charge phase, which means that you will get it for the shooting phase, just not your first shooting phase. It's odd. Phase, right? Because no, it triggers in the charge phase, but it lasts a full turn, and it just says when a unit makes an attack within 6 inches. So World Leaders, the reroll hits or off Angron is not just combat. It is shooting as well, but it's worded very weirdly. So that is just how it works. So there's a lot more life breathed into this, but I think 8-bound and Exalted 8-bound need another points drop, to be honest with you.
Yeah. All right, well, so that's all the points. We've gone through the rules commentary, we went through the balanced data slate, and now the points for every single faction. So to summarize, in my opinion, I am very thankful that Games Workshop decided not to just stick with their plan and only do points and wait until like that December, January, end of year period to do points plus a data slate. Instead, they've edited their roadmap. They've gone ahead and did a data slate change as well as points, and I think that was really needed for the game. I wish they did it sooner, but they got enough data, and we actually got some really good changes, especially to the core rules, that are going to help balance the game in a way that it just hasn't been since the launch of 10th edition. There were too many factions at the top that just were superior to everything below by a significant margin. Even player skill wasn't enough to really bring up those bottom factions. Now I think it is.
I think it is, yes.
I think the factions have accordion. There's still some losers here that are towards the bottom, but they're not so far below the mid-tier or the top-tier armies that it's impossible to win, I don't think.
Yes. I think the state of the game is significantly better than it was yesterday. I think that Eldar is still the best army, but I don't think they're unapproachably good. I think if you plan for them and you play better, you can beat them, which is like the minimum we ask for. But that is what you can do into Eldar now.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because they're going to have certain problem areas. Like primary control is an issue for Eldar. They used to just table you and it didn't matter about that. Now it will matter because games will be ideally closer with good terrain. And because of that, things like 30 Grey Knight Terminators, 40 Necron Warriors are going to be an issue since they can't just plug the Wraith Knight button of 30 mortals, you're dead. Doesn't matter. I win the game. They can't do that anymore. So now they have to come up with answers. And those answers might make their lists more balanced in a way where they don't just run over the bottom factions.
Yes. The win rates, I mean, they're not 100% representative. They're representative, I guess, of the health of the game. But the win rates should come together. There's still top armies and there's still bottom armies, and I wouldn't be surprised if we were... I'm almost certain that we're going to be outside of the 55 to 45 band. I'd be shocked if we were inside that. I would love it if we were, but I don't think we are there yet. But I think we're headed in the right direction. The bottom armies got buffs basically across the board. Some of them were enough to make them like new, fresh, interesting. Some of them were just you get more stuff, which at the very least helps, right? It doesn't hurt you to get more stuff. And basically all of the top armies got hit some amount.
Yeah, I think I've really enjoyed the core rules of 10th edition, how the edition plays, even the missions too, but I have not felt like I was really getting to play 10th edition because some armies were just dramatically better than others, and I think this helps that problem, and we're going to finally get to play 10th edition for the first time, really, is my opinion.
Yeah.
Like, really get the sense of the edition.
Yeah, the balance was just in such a wacky place that, like...
It didn't matter what the mission rules were, what you're playing. Eldar was just tabling you. It did not matter. GSC, same thing. You're just getting tabled.
And they are probably still the best... Eldar's probably still the best army. We'll have to see how the meta shakes out. And GSC, I'd be surprised if they dropped out of top 5. But they are beatable. And that is what we asked for.
Yep. Consistently beatable. If you tailor for it, if you master the matchup.
And by consistently beatable, we mean if you play better and you prepare for it, you can win that game.
Yeah.
They're not easy to beat.
It's not once in a blue moon, my opponent failed every single wound roll this turn, and that was the thing that I needed. You don't need crazy swings.
Yes.
So I'm really excited. I hope everybody is also excited. Like I said, we have 2 brand new Dataslate games in the War Room right now, Grey Knights versus Necrons and Tyranids versus Death Guard. So if you want to check out those matchups, click the description below, thewarroom.vhx.tv. And there's a 3-day free trial, so you can just sign up for the trial, watch the games, enjoy it, check out all the other content we're putting out, and just really all your support has been amazing for us. We really appreciate it. We're glad that people can finally be excited about playing 10th edition. I know Games Workshop definitely is. They did this because they want you to enjoy this game, and so we need to be vocal about this is exactly the type of update we want to the game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right, let's cover some of them super chats.
Yep, let's go up to the super chats. Here we go.
All right. All the way up. We got quite a few. All right,
so a lot of people joined in the War Room. Thank you so much to everybody who joined. Anybody who was generously gifted subs by our donors, make sure you accept that sub. YouTube will give you a notification or it'll pop up somewhere. You do have to accept it, and then you'll get the benefits of the bronze tier War Room. So first up, we've got, so broadsides have no save against dev wounds.
Yeah, that's from Will I Really Am.
They do not, and it's a bit of a nerf, but they went down 20 points, and they're still a good shooting unit, so I don't feel too bad about it. It's not like that rule came up too often anyway. It really just changed that rule, frankly.
Yeah, you're going to see fewer units with dev wounds, because dev wounds, while still being good, don't get me wrong, is less of a draw.
Yeah.
For example, the high damage dev wounds, significantly worse.
Then we got Snivar. Jag is wearing the Team Iceland Snivar jersey right now. It
says Snivar on the back.
Thank you so much for being a member for 32 months, OG.
It was great, again, to see you at WTC this year, and hopefully next year.
So have they fixed our SC2 boys? How would you rank Necrons, Custodes, GK, Votann right now? I would put probably Necrons first, then Grey Knights, and then Custodes.
Probably. I think if you are...
I think they're close. I think Necrons, Custodes, and GSC aren't too far off of each other.
No, I think they're pretty close. I think it comes down to which one you are most comfortable playing.
Votann is likely the worst out of them, but I think I can get a good amount that I can play into any of those armies.
Yes.
So they're way closer than they were before. Then we've got Short Yeti. Thanks so much for the $5 super chat. Rejoice, Doomstalker. Terror is indeed over. They were seen at the Nova Open. A lot of people were running Doomstalkers. I never really
play tested them a couple times. I thought they were fine.
I always preferred either go for the Heavy Destroyers for a cheaper option or go for the Doomsday Arcs. Because they went up, I'm still probably just going for the Heavy Destroyers anyway.
Yeah.
Then we've got CAK, $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Death Guard are back, baby. Can we please see a Death Guard game soon? Guess what? It is in the War Room right now against brand new Tyranids. So check it out. All those new Death Guard rules on the table. And it was a really good match, too.
Yep.
We've got Warrior 4356. Thank you for the super chat. Custodes attachment rule bad. Dev wounds, not mortal wounds.
Yeah. So, yes, it hurts, for sure. But there are still quite a few mortal wounds in the game. Keep in mind, in 9th edition, dev wounds weren't a thing. And you still use the Custodes strat quite a bit. Now, yes, Smite was a thing there, but Grenade strat is a thing here. Impact mortals are very high in
Tank Shock.
In 10th edition, Tank Shock, things like that.
Doom Bolt from Thousand Suns, the Grey Knight Librarians.
Exactly. There are still plenty of things that dish out mortal wounds, and you will feel it. Don't worry.
Yeah. Zlack Onion with a $2 super chat. Thanks so much. +1 save for Rangers. They're the new Eldar. That is a little mind-boggling to me that that's the change, but at least the troops are a lot cheaper too, so they are dramatically better, the troops themselves. Then we got Grotworks Mech Shop. Thanks so much for the $5 super chat. GSC took more nerfs than Eldar. Changed my mind, and CK changes were unwarranted. I think the internal balance between Chaos Knights, this helps change that, where you actually want to run a Rampager, you want to run the Carnivores, instead of just spamming Brigands. Now, it's a little bit of a thought, though you're still taking 6 Brigands, because they're the best.
Yes. GSC definitely took more nerfs than Eldar, for sure.
Yeah, they definitely
did. Not really a question. They both went up about the same amount of points.
Eldar went up more points on their best list, but their rule change needed more. Also, they were just better than GSC.
GSC has like 10 units in the book. Eldar has like 50, so they have a deeper bench to pull from.
Yeah. Thanks so much from Adaptive Subroutines for 31 months. We're here for the Necrons. Let's go. Some high hopes for the Grey Knights as well. Both factions are in an amazing spot.
Yes, for sure. I'm very excited. You're excited for both of them. I'm excited for Grey Knights.
Hey, you've played Necrons too. You should be excited.
I'm very excited, Siegs.
Then we've got Azuma. Thank you so much for the $2 super chat. When do we just ban Eldar from all events? It is playable to beat Eldar now with a good amount of factions. I don't know if every faction can do it. I don't know if Sisters really are anywhere near that. But Necrons, Grey Knights have actual good matchups, I think, into Eldar.
If you outplay your opponent, you can beat them. And that is where the game should be. If you can outplay them, it is possible to beat them. Whereas before, you could outplay them and beat them, but unlikely. More likely, you would outplay them and lose. And that is gone now. Well, you can still outplay them and lose. This is still 40k. This is still 40k, and they're still a very good army, but at least there is the possibility to win.
Then we've got Jimmy here with a $2 super chat. Karn is my boy. 80 points to just murk people.
MFers, yes. Karn at 90 points, or 80 points, does punch significantly harder than than his price point suggests. So big fan of that.
Warrior with another $2 super chat. Thank you so much. Still no official rule on what Trajan's ability affects, the one that ignores all modifiers. Yep. So as people have played it, basically any AP modifiers, hit and wound, all that stuff just gets ignored. Damage modifiers probably could use one, but if it doesn't have one, it means that general rule that's how they see it.
There's a decent amount of events just ruling it that way. Yep. Yeah. We'll see. Yes, it should have.
As soon as people start playing it the wrong way, is that when Games Workshop starts adding it to rules commentary.
Yeah.
Then we got Mr. Pig. Thanks so much for the $5 super chat. For the Death Guard changes, can't they also make an objective have a contagion aura? I believe so. I believe there's a way.
Yeah, I think when they stick you the objective, if you're on the objective, you count as in contagion range. But that's only while the objective is
Neither of us played
sticky.
Death Guard, and that rule never came up in the games I played against them.
Yeah, if they stick you an objective, as long as the objective is still under your control, it counts as having it. It counts as being in contagion range while you're on the objective. Which is great. Does not come up at all because you need to be on the objective but not controlling it. It's weird.
Then we got Dan playing Dan, a £5 super chat. Thanks so much. Loving the stream. I don't see any changes to indirect. Did it really not get changed at all? Mostly it was through points increases. Yes. The rule itself is still the same, but Desolation Marines nerfed. We've got Guard indirect was nerfed somewhat. Night Spinners went up 10 points. That was quite low as well. But by and large, a bunch of indirect platforms got nerfed. Not all of them. Whirlwinds are still very good.
But they will kill you as dead as they did before. They'll just have less other stuff in the list.
Yep. Then we've got Lord Solar working the steps, cleaning up his life. Well,
I'd love to see it, buddy. You had an intervention. This is a big step for you.
I'm glad he's cleaning up his life. It's important.
It is. We care about you.
Thank you so much. I've come on here a couple times, tore up on Rattling Ale. Sorry that I said that Jack has the body hair of a Mordian lady at the night.
How did he know?
I have a Bulgrin who clubs me when I try to get near the Martian wine now.
That's for the best. That's for the best.
Oh, Lord Solar, we love you. Yeah. Thanks so much for the super chat. Then we got Tolkash01 with a €10 super chat. The Leagues of Votann buffs, the new detachment rule is great. The points drops are massive. Army improved, but how much? I think it's at least mid-tier now. I think there's a lot of play to this army, especially because Hearthguard went down. You just have so much more stuff than you have. The army already played the mission. Like, I was scoring almost 40 secondaries every single time with Votann. Now I have more stuff that's just pretty much guaranteed. And on top of that, it's going to come down to can you control the center of the board, and Votann actually do that pretty well. We've got Sark here with a super chat. Thanks so much. Honest, please, do you have any hopes for Harlequins? Void Weavers, Death Jester up. Nothing else changed?
Nothing else changed. Their units are not that good. They're like one part of the Eldar army that actually isn't great. I don't know, buddy. I don't see it really. I'm sorry.
I think they're kind of where Sisters and those armies are.
Yeah, they're at that level. Like, they're not the worst army in the game if you took pure Harlequins, but they're down there.
There's quite a bit of tricks with troops and boats and being able to get back in with stuff. So high skill player can get more out of them, but it's still not. Their like damage output's so low.
Yeah.
Especially with Void Weavers nerfed.
All right. We have Bill Cipher. Still hurts that the Tiger Shark can't shoot until turn 3.
Yeah, it's one of the Tau models I just don't own, and I don't plan to because it's never fit in my playstyle, and I hate huge chunks of resin.
Yep.
But thanks so much for the super chat. We've got Dernolan, thanks so much for the $5 super chat. Votann hype, rockin' stone, heck yeah. Y'all think dev wounds will apply after normal saves like how mortals are now? So dev wounds just ignores armor and invulnerable saves.
It specifically says on the rule that it does apply all the way at the end.
Yep.
It says that in the rule. I believe when this was posted, people pointed it out to him, so he should already know that now.
Yep. Then we got Jeremiah. Thanks so much for the $5 super chat. Is the Venerable Dreadnought worth it in Grey Knights at 155 as a haloed and soulfire target in the middle of a Terminator Death Star?
So you need to teleport it onto the board. So I'm not really sure if that's something you can do. I don't.
You can't. It only can come in from strategic reserve.
Sad.
Yeah.
So
otherwise, I would actually run it.
I do think it's better. Like, it's not bad. Having a reroll 1s to hit and wound aura for infantry means that really helps out your damage.
Yep. And if it's just hiding behind a midfield ruin, it's not getting killed. But it's slow on the board, so getting from ruin to ruin is hard, and you can't deep strike it into the middle.
It moves 6. It's, I believe it does auto advance 6, which is pretty funny. But
does it have that roll? I thought it doesn't because it's not a psyker unit.
Does it need to be a psyker? It is a psyker.
Oh, it is a psyker. Okay.
I'll check and see.
Why is it a psyker?
I'll check because it's got a dude psyker in there,
but it doesn't have a benefit.
It doesn't have an ability. No. I will check to see if you can auto advance at 6. That would be a big help, but it does not. You can't pick it back up and put it back down because it does not have the. It does not have the army rule. And also, it doesn't have deep strike, so you can never halo in soulfire.
It's one of those data sheets that has a great rule, and then the actual playing it, getting it used on the table is hard.
Yes.
We've got Fate Stay Dreamer. Thanks so much for the $10 super chat. 2 Blade Guard plus 2 Champs, Redeemer, Helbrecht, Lieutenant, Brethren, Redeemer, Grim Assault Intercessors. My list went down, and now I have 240 points to work with. Any suggestions to what to add?
Okay, so this is a bunch. 2 Blade Guard units plus 2 Chaplains in a Redeemer. Damn, that's expensive.
Another Redeemer.
Not as much. And then you've got Helbrecht plus an LT plus 10 Brethren in a Redeemer, which hits like the Force of God itself. Grim plus Assault Intercessors. My list went down, 240 points to work with. All right, here's what I want you to do. I want you to cut something, anything, and get a unit of 10 Terminators with the 5-up Feel No Pain. Pretty darn good. It's really good, actually. Assault Terminators with the 5-up Feel No Pain. I think the 2 Blade Guard plus the Chaplain plus the Redeemer is still too many points as it is. So I think you want to cut that, get the Terminator unit, and get some random nonsense in there to hold points down and score points, so your expensive units don't have to sit back on objectives. That's the one way that people will be able to beat you, is that you have to put your Terminators, or not your Terminators, you have to put your expensive units or Redeemer on objectives, free yourself up from that.
Yep.
So Grim plus Assault Intercessors can also do that. The Terminators are very good, though, so I would try and find a way to put them in.
Yep. We got Scott here with a $5 super chat. Thank you so much, Scott. Is the Telemon in a spot where it's usable now?
Let's check the points on it. It was not one of the ones that would be under A for Adeptus.
Yeah. Custodes.
Adeptus Custodes. Telemon Heavy Dreadnought. It's still 235. It's pretty cheap for what it is. I still probably would say no.
Yeah. I think you just go for the Caladius and you have those angles with your shooting.
Yep. You take Caladius and you take a couple bricks. That's where I would start at least.
Then we've got a $5 super chat from Antonio. Thank you so much. Convinced AdMech is a joke to GW. At least Qatari look better. At least you get to use the rules a lot of datasheets have, which is if you're near battle line, you're going to have more battle line. They are dramatically improved, but it's still going to be basically breacher spam for AdMech for the time being. Yes. But maybe the codex is going to be awesome, so fingers crossed. $5 super chat from Matt O. Didn't get everything, but my sister's list still got 165 points. Plus, the meta seems more compressed. Excited to get some games in. I know John is excited too. And spoiler alert, we're going to do a extra game this week just for this balanced data slate, but it's coming tomorrow, and it's going to be Sisters versus Votann.
Interesting.
Yep. And build a list Sisters is tomorrow morning. So tune in for that. Tune in for the game. Come hang out tomorrow.
Yep. I double-checked. You need to have the Deep Strike rule in order to get the 6-inch advance. So, unfortunately, it's very slow, and that probably holds it back. It's not going to be near the other units. So I'm talking about the Venerable Dreadnought. It's not going to be near other units because those units teleport around like a madman, and he cannot.
Then we've got Josh B here with a $2 super chat. Thank you so much. Rip T Suns hovering around 50%. Too good for us.
I think Thousand Suns were one of the armies where if you had a finely tuned list and you were very good with it, it would outperform 50% dramatically. So, unfortunately, those builds got nerfed in addition to other ones, but I do think there's room to play the army still, for sure.
Then we got Apex Eternals. Thank you so much for another $10 super chat. With the Swarm Lord being 270 points and 35 points more than a Tyrant, will the Swarm Lord's extra CP per command phase and Evac make him worth taking over the Tyrant now and Games Workshop change free strats? I personally don't think so. I've talked to John, and his opinion is you still run the Tyrant. And I haven't seen Swarm Lord appear in his list yet, but maybe he will reconsider after kind of deciding.
Yeah. I know that a lot of the strats he can double up on are the ones you'd want to. Like, for example, in the Brain Bug detachment, you get Armor of Contempt and the reroll ones to hit and wound against the target. You can... I don't know how the targeting works on the reroll ones hit and wound, but I believe you can double up on both of those or both battle tactics. So a lot of your good stratagems are the ones you can use multiple times with the Tyrant.
Yep, and then we have the Cheese Mac. It says message retracted, but I read it ahead. So $5 super chat asking about whether where AdMech are kind of fit and if Votann's better than them. I do think Votann is actually better than AdMech. Votann has more stuff, they have more tools, and they have 3 units that are very strong, even stronger than Breachers, I think. Not necessarily in the long-range game, but in the overall controlling the game. But I think that they're much closer. I don't think AdMech is dramatically worse than Votann. I think they're around similar. Honorable Mr. Hardwork. We've got Pour One Out for the Dusty Boys. Are Sisters any good now? They're probably down there with AdMech as 2 of the bottom tier type of armies, I would imagine is going to happen.
I think so. I actually want to handle Matt O's question last because I think it's a very good way to end. We got membership Vindicare. Gifted 1 Art of War membership to, can we see who it was?
Who got...
it would be if you...
Yeah, I have to go back. Nope, it's not that.
Live chat.
Where?
Who got it? Phil Bird.
Phil Bird was sniped by the Vindicare in chat.
That's right. You have been sniped, Phil Bird. All right. So next up we got JW with a €6 super chat. Hey, Rich, good Tau discounts, but how deal with heavy armor lists like Knights?
So already Crisis Suits deal with it. Now you get extra tools. So you can go for broadsides. Broadsides are fantastic into Knights. You could go for more Crisis Suits. You can go with Farsight in a Crisis unit for the +1 to wound. Or you can bring in Skyrays. They went down 30 points. Longstrike and Hammerheads are relatively reasonable, and they're fairly efficient into those type of units. But if you're not going... I would go for Crisis Suits first. And the way I would do it is I would add a Fireblade in through Unity Devastation so that you get lethal hits on them. And once you add lethal hits with full rerolls from the Tetra, or full rerolls from the Tetra with exploding double 6s, you do tremendous amounts of damage into Knights. So through Unity, Farsight, Big Man, Crisis Unit, pick one of those things, or try and combine them in some way, and you'll delete Knights turn after turn. Knights now can't just see over terrain and shoot at the Crisis unit that's staging behind terrain, and it's a huge buff for Tau into them.
Yeah, T-Suns was also a massive problem for Tau, and they lost a lot of steam.
You can also just spam Secret Missiles all over the place. Devilfish have 2 of them, Piranhas have 2 of them. You can just have a lot of Secret Missiles all over the place, and that's totally fine too.
Yeah. Thousand Suns would just double move a dude over, take your armor save away, shoot you out of line of sight, and then just murder entire Crisis bricks without consequence. And they're worse. I mean, they can still do that, but they are worse at doing it.
Yep, we've got the Cheese Mac. Thanks so much for the $5 super chat. Hey Siegs, don't know how this is supposed to bring AdMech out of 40% with Knights being less prevalent and Omni being worse. I don't know. I still think that they will be okay-ish because you have at least play. You have a lot of OBSEC and a lot of OBSEC denial with Vanguard plus the Techno-Archaeologist. So you can control the board and objectives pretty well. It's just your firepower is inconsistent outside of Breachers. And that's going to result in, if you lose too many Breachers too early, you're going to run out of steam and probably lose the game. So the top of the kind of meta coming down helps AdMech a lot. But they should have probably got some extra rule here or another change besides Skitarii datasheet, is my opinion. So thanks so much for those super chats. And then finally, we have Matt O here, $5 super chat. Broader question, does this dataslate make you all more excited for singles events? 100%. We're going to be going to Crucible in Florida later this month. We're probably going to all be at Tampa, the US Open event in October. We have all qualified for the US Open Atlanta Finals as well and should be there in November. And guess what? We're going to be going to events. I'm very excited to be playing 40k again because it feels like I'm playing 40k. It doesn't feel like I show up and I have to be, I have to have 3 brains to try and beat this Eldar player who's, eating crayons or something like that. So I'm much more excited to go play.
Yes. Something to know is that I believe nobody in the Art of Warhouse has gone to a singles event in 10th edition. And
team events have helped the game.
Team events have helped the game. And team events we've gone to and we've had a very good time at. But not speaking for everyone, speaking for myself, I did not enjoy 10th edition very much as a whole before this balanced data slate. And I didn't want to shell out a bunch of money and a bunch of time and hassle going to a singles event when I'm not very excited for it. And 10th edition, the bones were fine. It was good and you could get good games. But I wasn't excited to go to events and play Eldar, GSC, Eldar, GSC. And I didn't want to play Eldar. I didn't want to play GSC. I wasn't excited for those armies. Same. I didn't want to put them on the table. And so I just didn't go. I just didn't go to events. And, now we are going to events. We're going to Crucible, Tampa, Atlanta, Finals, all of that. Everyone's excited to run different lists. I know Quentin's thinking of running Space Wolves. Yep. He's played a lot of Eldar. He's still thinking of running Eldar. You're thinking between 3 different armies you could run.
4. All my armies are pretty much viable. AdMech is the worst of them for sure, but Grey Knights is so improved and so high skill cap. You've got Tau, which is massively improved. Votann are as well, and Necrons are one of the top armies in my opinion.
Yes. So we're
total
all
opposite
very
from the start of the edition where I was like, no, I have the worst armies.
So we're all very excited. I think the game got a big breath of fresh life breathed into it.
Very excited about this. I cannot wait to play.
Yes. So
all I want to do this weekend is play some games.
Yeah, you're going to see Siegs out of his room playing games of 40k. This is crazy. You don't see that. So I think
this is what the game needed. Thank you, Games Workshop.
Thank you so much.
All right, we got a couple more super chats here. Chris with a $5 super chat. Necrons seemed like they did okay. Silvertide back. It is 100% back. I just played it in the war room against Jack's Grey Knights, and it was a fantastic game. And it shows you the power of these warriors. I also played at the early part of the edition, warriors into Chaos Demons, and man, did Nick not have a good time against it. If you can't kill 20 warriors, you are going to get drowned.
Yeah, you're going to lose. Period.
Yeah.
I think Necrons are one of the strongest armies in the game right now, for sure.
There's a couple armies that are very good into them, but they're good into the field, by and large. Ian Burke, thanks so much for the $10 super chat. I play White Templars. Grim with... I'll let you read this, Jack.
Yeah, you just don't know the abbreviations. That's fine. That's what I'm here for. We got Grimaldus with 5 Sword Brethren, Helbrecht with 5 Sword Brethren, a Blade Guard Ancient with 6 Blade Guard, a Judiciary with 6 Blade Guard, Terminator Chaplain with 5 Terminators, Land Raider, Predator, Annihilator, and Ballistus Dread. List went down 205. Advice on what to include. Man, I cannot emphasize enough. I love this 10-man Terminator brick with the 5-up Feel No Pain. I think it's very, very good. This is just general stuff. I really like Redemptors in Black Templars now. I like Ballistus Dreads in Black Templars now. And the Crusaders, regular and Primaris, I think are very efficient for their cost. Probably what I would do is I just take those 205 points and I would exactly staple on 5 more Assault Terminators and call that one a day.
I agree with that. And then we've got Shell here, #1 Servo Skulls enjoyer. Thank you so much. IO boys, what is your opinion on dropping the Overlord for Imatech? Free strat isn't nearly as good now, and a free CP per turn is far better. I agree. However, Necrons don't really use too many strats, especially the Silver Tide list. You're basically using the reanimation strat. Not too much else. Maybe the reroll wounds in a shooting activation. But you're going to stack up CP. This literally happened in the game that we played. And so I didn't feel like I needed a free CP per turn. Instead, I think the Lord is actually the best, the basic Lord, because he lets you use strats on the unit even when you're battle shocked. And battle shocking warrior units is one of the best ways to limit their power. So being able to still use the strat to regen is very important, or a CP reroll as well. And he also gives +1 move, which is very nice, and can carry a res orb.
Yep. I have a question about my WTC list in the chat. It came down to 45, how I complete it. I actually played a game. It's in the War Room right now, where you can see complete thoughts on where Grey Knights are. Long story short, it's still going to be the 2 10-man Terminators, a 10-man Paladin, 2 Librarians with some enhancements, and Drago, 2 squads of strikes, and a Calidus, I think is where I'm currently at. That's where my head's at.
That is literally the list I also wrote. Yeah. High five.
High five.
Big brains. Then we've got Greg here with a super chat as well. Great analysis, boys. Finally excited to dust off my World Eaters after using them for a grand total of 3 months in 9th edition. This is the best time to bring them out. World Eaters, like Jack said, got a lot of play, and I expect them to do fairly well. And they should at least be a mid-tier army, I think. Like, with how many bodies you can throw on the table and some of the tricks that they have.
Yeah, I think they'll be hitting between 45 and 50%, which means they are something that you can play.
Yep.
Like, you can actually play with them, I think.
All right. Well, thanks so much, everybody. Like we said, there are 2 balance update games right now in the War Room. They are Grey Knights versus Necrons, and then there is Tyranids versus Death Guard. Check them out. The description below, thewarroom.vhx.tv. And there's a 3-day free trial, so it doesn't hurt. Sign up on the free trial, watch the games, enjoy the other content, because there's a lot more coming. And we're going to be playing tons and tons of games. There's a bonus live YouTube game tomorrow, right after the Build a Sisters list. We're going to play that Sisters list up against my Votann live for you. So come on, hang out tomorrow, starting 10 a.m. with the Build a List, and then 1 p.m. Eastern time for that Sisters versus Votann game.
Yep.
And then we got Thailand, one last super chat here, $5 super chat. Jack, want to test your idea on some more Black Templars? A lot of Black Templar hype here. Glad to see it.
Yeah, no, very excited for Black Templars. I am strongly considering running them. Test the idea of 2 units of 6 Blade Guard vets, a Justiciar, a Captain, and a Redeemer. I don't think you want a Captain. I think if you do anything, you take like a Chaplain, give him +1 to wound, or 2 Justiciars or something. I think it's still too expensive, even though it came down a not unreasonable amount. But I think it got a lot better, right? Redeemer's 260, the Blade Guard vets are 180 apiece, so it's still going to be like 600 points, just running the math off the top of my head. But it's still going to be like 700 points almost. But it is better than it was before.
Thank you so much, everybody. Really enjoyed it. Look at the hype for 40k. Look at the hype for 10th edition. I know we're massively excited. We know you guys are as well. So please do join us for more content coming up tomorrow, as well as in the coming weeks. We're going to try and play every single matchup, all the games, and we're going to be going to tournaments. So please come say hello if you're at any of those tournaments. We'd love to meet you. And finally, we just really appreciate your support. Give us a like, subscribe to the channel, tell your friends about us, and leave a comment. What are you most excited for in the balance update? What changes the most for you, and what are you excited to put on the table? We'd love to hear it. We read all the comments personally, so like I know I do. So I'm just excited to see what other people are enjoying. All right. Thanks a lot, everybody. We'll see you all very soon, and really appreciate you all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks so much. So long for now.